The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSRTV, your home for sim racing.
Live from the Circuit of the Americas here in Austin, Texas, LSRTV presents to you the Sportscar Showdown, another round of the Atlantic Major Series right here on LSRTV and iRacing Live and Facebook Live. Cisco Scaramuza, Kelly Dahl, and Andrew Cardinale here to bring you all the action. And guys, we've got some of these races already completed, but we're, as per usual, back in the Atlantic Split once again. Practice just about ready to finish up for these guys, but road course racing here, and we're going by IMSA split rules here today. So we've got the Corvette prototype, we've got GT3s, and we've got GTEs all on tap for 2 hours of racing here from the US's premier F1 circuit. Kelly, what are you expecting here as we get ready to get things underway today?
Well, we saw a very similar style of race to open the major series when we had the Retro 2.4 at Daytona, but these cars, we're basically running the modded versions of these cars, and what's really going to be the main important thing here is the traffic management. This can be a very difficult track to pass at, especially for these some of the GTEs. Actually, we'll probably have a lot of trouble passing the GTEs going through the S's at the beginning of the race. So it's a place where you've got to be smart, have some patience, and pick your locations to pass. You can't just throw the car in there and hope it's going to stick. So really, I think it's going to come down to who can pick their way through the traffic the best, and that's going to be the winner tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Kelly and Andrew, just about a minute and a half to go here. And what do you think is going to be the key for this multi-class racing? Obviously, this track, hosts F1 series, and we've seen endurance racing here before, but what's the secret to making sure you don't get caught up in traffic?
Well, Cisco, I went and ran the Sebring 12-hour about a month ago, actually, with some teammates, and the main thing we did there, we were in the GT3 class, which meant we were the slowest cars of the bunch. We kind of just did everything we could to stay out of the leader's way. We took the inside part of the corner and then just kind of let go on the straightaways. You don't want to give up your own race in a corner necessarily just to let guys by, but certainly, just give way to guys that are faster than you. I think if you're in a faster car like the DP here today, this is a really tough place to run, a lot of really tight corners. Just, think of it as a long 2-hour race. Don't think of it as just that one lap, that one corner.
Yeah, absolutely, and just getting ready, about 30 seconds left to go before we head to your starting grid, and we are on the full circuit here of the Circuit of the Americas, the track that F1 runs every year for the U.S. Grand Prix. So you can see high above, you can take a look at this picture, but one of the biggest characteristics of this track, Kelly, is the fact that a lot of it is very flat. There is elevation change obviously on the first turn, but generally most of the circuit you're driving at a slight grade downhill, and when I say slight, it's very slight, which makes it very hard to see a lot of these corners.
Yeah, you really have to commit this track to memory, especially those S's at the beginning. It's a track where you can suddenly forget how many corners do I have left before I'm on to the next straight. But once you've got this track memorized, it becomes a bit more easy, but it does take a lot because, as you said, you can't see these corners.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. But grid being assembled right now for us, so we're going to take a look and go through your starting grid here as we get all loaded up, ready to go. And cars getting ready to head on track for 2 hours of racing. You can see the Corvettes out there right now, and we'll run through them. They'll be at the beginning of our starting grid here. And it's going to be Stephen Baxter going to be on pole with Stefan Scherlacher in second place. Third place, rolling off the starting grid, is going to be Riley Thompson. Ross Banfield going to start fourth. Fifth place going to go to the driver of Chuck Chambliss.
Mike Kelly will be rolling off in sixth in that number 3 car. Lonnie Fitch rolls off in seventh. Eighth goes to Carl Burke. Ninth is Terry Wellman. And rounding out our top 10 for the Corvettes is Jerry Forkold. Oh, that is very Forkold.
Starting off from the 11th position, one of the last 3 of the DPs will be Rick Scott in the 60. Julian Huxley will follow him up in 12th. Mark Wendowski in 13th. He's the final DP on your grid. Starting on pole for the GTE class will be Tom Stanley in the number 961, followed by Thomas Peterson in the 956, and Joshua Kanata in the 97. Going through the GTE field, we've got Edward Caranci, I believe, in the 23 car. In 4th in the GTE cars, Claude Belval in the 56th and 5th. Mike Golightly in 6th. Mark Lawson in 7th. Terry Halleck in 8th. Simon Thorns in 9th. And Eric Klein 10th among the GTE cars.
Marshall Williams are rolling off 24th overall. Jason McSparron in 25th overall. 11th and 12th respectively in the GTEs. 13th of the GTEs goes to James Dowan. Samuel Dowdy will be rolling off right after them. And rounding out our GTE field will be Ivo Andrini. Starting on pole for the GT3s will be Brandon Whitworth. Alongside him will be Patrick Hingston rolling off in second for the GT3s. GT3 third place, Rolly Collins. Eddie Hawks rolls off in 4th, and Daniel Knight rolling off in 5th.
Yeah, then the rest of the field, Brian Barney, Randy Ludwig, Jason Wallet, Jose Pabon, Aaron Brown, and Craig Hawkins round out your field. Here's the cars make it through the final corner. Green flag going to be in the air. We're racing for 2 hours of racing here at Circuit of the Americas, and we head off to turn number 1 here, being led by your prototype field.
And look at Stefan already trying to make a move for the race lead on the other Stefan around turn 1, but that 888 machine of Baxter is going to win out around that first corner. But this is already our first battle shaping up, and it is a battle for the lead. We're going to have to see who's going to be able to deal with the S's the best, and that's actually going to go probably towards that 888, because that 117 car is going to be dealing with a little bit of aero push from the wash from that car in front, but he's handling those corners very well. And look right behind, Riley Thompson starting to get himself into this picture.
Yeah, Thompson's in 3rd right now. Took a quick look at your Ferraris right now, and they're doing the GTE field rather, and Tom Stanley has a good lead over Thomas Peterson, and Brandon Whitworth leads your GT3 fields. Is one car going to be off there? It looks like the Ford of Jason McSparron has fallen off the circuit here, and he's having big time issues coming back on track, but everyone else looking to be fairly calm through the rest of your field as we look back to the lead of prototypes.
And that was a pretty tame lap 1, turn 1 situation for most of the field. Everybody pretty much settling in pretty quickly for this 2-hour race. You see Stephen Baxter gets away to a decent lead for lap 1, that is. Stefan Schlacker, I think, in 2nd place. And really, these guys, again, a very tame lap 1 for COTA. Generally, this place throws a lot of curveballs at these guys on the start of the race because you're packed up and you're maybe not in the lane that you want to be for some of these corners, not getting the entry you want. And you know, I think Cisco mentioned it already. This place is really flat. You can't really see into the next corner a lot when you get to the top of the hill into the S's. It's really tough to find the next corner, and these guys all did it with just absolute professionalism.
And coming through the final corner right here, it's going to be Baxter going to come back to the start-finish line here and lead the first lap of your prototype fields. And already it looks like we're expecting, as one of the deals as we cut back and we're able to show you the ticker now, is the fact that ticker will give us a rough idea of how many laps we're going to be racing here, and right now showing about 61 laps per pace for the moment, so we'll have to see if that holds up, but that should give us an idea also on fuel strategy and how long these guys are going to stay out there as we look at Chuck Chambliss, who runs through in that 4th position in your prototypes right now. Close battle between Claude Belval and Edward Carnassi in that 23 and the 56. Those two are about a less than a second or so apart. Looking through the rest of your field, the closest battle right now is Samuel Doty and James Dowen. Those two almost side by side. They are side by side coming out of your first turn.
And they're going to go into the S's side by side. And who's going to be able to win this out? It's looking like Dowen's going to have the advantage going into the S's, but he can't get to the Ape. Oh, he's going to cut off the Doughty behind him as he kind of hesitated going to the Apex for a moment. And that nearly caused some problems. As now they've got a bit of a stack up behind them. It looks like some GT3s are actually going to try to get around these guys now, as these GTE cars just aren't quite keeping up the pace. And looks like Dowen's still trying to hold off Doughty's. They're still battling coming out of the S's, and Dowen is going to win that out as the GTEs are trying to force their way through.
Yeah, they are, Kelly, and the GTEs, you can see, look at just this massive stack up behind the 66 right now. A little bit of contact there, and it's going to get a little bit sketchy. Here's around goes Samuel Doty. The 66 goes around, gets turned from off the nose of, I believe that was a Mercedes, but we're going to take a second look at that one. But we figured this might be an issue with the long straightaways here that's going to benefit the Mercedes, and just ran out of racing room at that point.
Yeah,
and he just kind of lost it all on his own there, Andrew.
Yeah, these quicker Mercedes kind of have to deal with the slower GTE cars, which normally, if you're in a Mercedes in one of these races, or even the Audi, the GT3 car, in addition to the Mercedes, you don't really normally think you're going to have to worry about slower cars ahead of you in a different class, but you often end up having to, especially at the start of these races where you end up getting into the slower GTE cars. And out of that hairpin, it looked like the 66 just got loose, got on the curbing, and spun that thing around. They don't have quite the assist that the GT3 cars do, and Patrick Hingston just had nowhere to go. Doesn't look like the front end of his car is too banged up. The 282 looking pretty good still, even though he did get into the 66 just a little bit. But that all settles out pretty quickly. He's still ahead of Brandon Whitworth.
Yeah, and side by side in front, Ferrari's making contact right there. It's Ivo Enderini and the 605 and James Dowen, that 42, and they got a little bit physical there as the Mercedes go by and completed lap number 2 just past your Daytona prototypes, rather, just going past the line here. We're kind of hovering around either 61 or 62 laps going to be running in this race so far, based on the pace. That'll come down with pit stops, so I'm expecting us to run about 58 to 59 or so here. But the Mercedes, you can already see starting to roll through, and you look at that Ferrari right there in the 605, and yeah, just kind of everybody for the moment here just trying to sort themselves out in what is going to be a very interesting dynamic. These Mercedes have a lot better top end, but you can see the GTEs close, or the GTEs close on the corners here. So this is going to be a battle of two basically different speed types here, Kelly.
And the GTs definitely have the advantage through the corners because they just have so much more downforce to be able to help them around. And but those GT3s, as you mentioned, have such a high top end, especially those Mercedes. Just watch them as they come out of this hairpin onto the long back straightaway. Just the moment they're able to get the power down, they just immediately start to pull a gap over these Ferraris, and it is a bit surprising. And it's something we'll see probably throughout the night, is these GTEs may be having to deal with that's what they would expect to be slower traffic behind them.
Yeah, and it's going to get a little bit close there as that's Enderini and Rory Collins going at it there, and Andreini going to kind of fall behind there and let the 35 of Rory Collins go here, so not worrying about that battle right now. But looking through the rest of your field, there's close battle. Riley Thompson closing up to Chuck Chambliss in your prototype field. The 283 trying to close the gap here and trying to get onto the podium as it sits right now for your prototypes.
And you mentioned Riley Thompson and Chuck Chambliss. They are battling for 3rd and 4th in the prototype class. A little further back, Ross Banfield is kind of settled into 5th place behind these guys. Mike Kelly in 6th, Lonnie Fitch in 7th. These guys right now are just, again, settling into a bit of a rhythm. And you mentioned fuel strategy, Cisco. That's going to come into play. I actually haven't driven the C7 just yet for an extended period of time, but I know that the other cars in the field should be able to go for just under an hour if they still have the full fuel tank in them, so they should be able to get a pretty long run in here. What that makes me wonder about is if they still have a full fuel load, will they have to pit twice?
Or if they're going to be better off conserving and may running in a higher fuel map here and conserving the fuel so that they only do have to stop once. Could be a possibility and strategy call for these guys, but looking through this battle between Thompson and Chambliss. We'll have to keep an eye on it for the moment here as we look back through, trying to find what else is going on around your circuit. And it's been fairly calm so far here. Andrini's kind of fallen off the back end of Rory Collins in that 35, so not much going on there. Brian Barney closing in a little bit to James Dowen. The 42 has not had a good start to this race. Kelly has kind of fallen through your field right now. Started 26, has fallen back to 32nd overall. And it's just not working for him, as it's going to get a little close there between the Audi and his Ferrari, but able to hold on to it right there, the 42.
Yeah, that 42 is definitely struggling. Had that spin earlier on, as we mentioned, and we saw a few times there. But going back to the pit strategy, one thing you mentioned these guys could save. One person I don't think is saving is Steven Baxter. I've been watching that car a few times, and he's definitely not. I don't know if he's conserving fuel, but I know for sure he is not conserving tires, because I have seen that car just burning those tires up as he goes around these corners. And that's one of the reasons why he's getting these really extremely fast lap times, is he is just throwing that car into the corners and making it stick. But that is something that could hurt him later on, is if he's trying to maybe stretch these runs just a little bit, it's not going to work, because the tires are just going to fall out from under him. So he's if he's gonna, it seems like he's just giving it all in this first stint, and maybe he'll try to conserve on the next stint. But it's there's definitely no conservation from that 888 machine right now.
Yeah, and Sherlocker is right now kind of falling behind and kind of in no man's land at the moment. And then you have those two cars of Chambliss and Thompson continuing to be nose to tail. So everybody kind of spread out through that part of the field. And the 676 right now, he's also kind of on his lonesome, starting to catch up to Huxley in the 322, but closing in there, but nothing really to gain there at the moment. A little bit side-by-side action. Blendowski, the 82, going to be side-by-side. That prototype sustained some damage here, Andrew, and that car looking worse for wear as it takes the wide apex here at the top of the circuit, and it's not looking very good, that prototype.
Yeah, it looks like Blendowski may not have had the greatest feel on that car to begin with, and he's got some left front damage, some right rear damage. Just all ends of the car look like it's been through something at the very least. He is kind of the outlier in the DP class, because really can't even consider Baxter an outlier just yet. He has a lead, sure, but he hasn't totally just left the field, whereas Blendowski is at least 12 seconds behind the next DP. So Blendowski really having some issues. Looks like, again, he doesn't really have a handle on the car right now. Hopefully he can figure that out as the race goes on. One thing, I guess kind of the best version of practice that you can get is literally in the race, and that's exactly what he's got here to deal with. Hopefully he can get a handle on that number 82 as the race goes on, as we still have I think an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah, still plenty of time. Hour 49:27 left on the clock here, but the ticker will be able to auto adjust laps on that. So just think we're lap 6 of 61 here, and we're about a tenth through the race so far according to our timing. But Stefan Sherlocker right now still trying to hunt down your leader, and looking through the rest of your field here, it looks like everybody kind of starting to hit their own stride for the moment. Randy Ludwig there, you see him in the 747, kind of starting to hunt down Eddie Hawks, the 45, two Mercedes there in your GT3 field here, but cruising right now through COTA as we continue to bring you the Atlantic Major Split. And it's kind of spaced out here, Kelly. Everybody's kind of fallen into their own little cliques here, and you got to think strategy is probably going to be on the minds for some of these drivers here. If they're only going to be to just before the end of the first hour, it's going to be a little bit of issues here and problems for the 676. Forkolb right now looking like he's in big time trouble. Not sure what happened to him, but it looks like he's pulled off for the moment. Might have received a throughput fall to his unacceptable level there.
Yes, just an unfortunate moment for him. Just basically, you got to equate that to a mechanical problem on that car. Is unfortunately a decent run is going to come to an end there. And speaking of what these drivers are focusing on, I think right now they're focusing on encountering lap traffic, because right now the DPs are encountering the GTEs for the few of the seeing them go through a few of the slower GT3s at the moment. But another thing to talk about is just the differences between these cars. The Daytona prototypes may be the fastest cars on the racetrack, but they're probably the least technologically advanced, because these cars are basically tube frame chassis with a big engine in them and no assists. They have no traction control, or very little traction control, and they have absolutely no anti-lock brake system. So these guys, you'll see these Daytona prototypes sliding around quite a bit if they get a little too heavy on the pedals.
Yeah, they will, and you saw Stephen Baxter there go around some lap traffic here, and yeah, the lapping has already begun in these prototypes, basically going to own this course with the amount of straightaways they have. The Mercedes might put up a little bit of a fight here, Andrew, but really those prototypes are going to own this circuit here for a majority of the race.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of Daytona, where you just have that huge couple of stretches of track where the DPs can really stretch their legs, whereas, sure, the GTE and GT3 classes can still get up to pretty high speeds, but just nothing like these DPs with their downforce, and really, I think they even have quite a significant weight advantage as well. But I do want to mention Blendowski has picked up some more damage, and I actually went back and tried to find it. It looked like it may have just come from the curbing through the S's where he is right now. I think he got wide in one of the S's and just completely destroyed the left rear of the car, but he's still getting into a rhythm of things, not doing too bad. So he picks up a position with the, I guess, exit of the 676. So he now isn't quite last, so that has to be a bit of an uptick for him. Further back, the only battle I really even see throughout the entire field for any sort of lead position right now in class anyway would be Brandon Whitworth and Patrick Hingston. They've, I guess, since kind of spread out a little bit. Whitworth has kind of pulled away from Hingston a little bit, but these guys are still pretty much on top of each other. So if any mistake comes out of the 377 of Whitworth, tell you what, Hingston will be on him.
Yeah, I will. So we'll just have to see. Whitworth going to have to deal with a couple GTEs here. The 101 of Marshall Williams right now, the first car in front of him, so we'll have to see. But that's your GT3 leader right now, Brandon Whitworth, and Stephen Baxter continuing to lead your prototypes, and Tom Stanley currently your leader in GTEs. And clicking down here, says 60 laps now, so we'll just have to see how these guys navigate here. But starting to begin the early stages of racing here from Circuit of the Americas, and with that, we'll take a moment, step aside, go LSRTV nonstop so you don't miss a moment of the action. We'll be right back here on LSRTV, your home for sim racing. Back live here at Circuit of the Americas. We've been watching this battle here between Mike Kelly and Ross Banfield for the moment, and these two about some of the closest drivers on track at the moment here as we bring you live coverage of the Atlantic Pro Split, the Sportscar Showdown here the Major Series. Cisco Scaramuza, Kelly Dahl, and Andrew Cardinale. The fourth, as it looked like Kelly was thinking about making a move to the inside, but nothing really going on right there. So it looks like Kelly going to continue to stalk the 897 of Ross Banfield.
Yeah, just quietly waiting for his moment to jump in there, and there's another opportunity. He's going to dive that car along, and this is definitely turning into quite a bit of a battle between these two drivers for that top 5 position, and Kelly is really trying to hunt down Banfield at this moment, just looking for an opportunity to pass. And Banfield, I think if he makes a single mistake, he's going to lose that position. It looks like Kelly's going to try to take another peek to the inside, but that's probably actually going to hurt him more than benefit him, as he's actually going to take a bit of a slower line through that corner.
Yeah, it will, and you can see Banfield's able to open up just a little bit there. They're going to have to lap traffic that SLS of, looks like Jason Wallet there in that 658, so he's going to go another lap down here. He's sitting 8th in class right now in your GT3 field for the moment, so doing a decent job here, and Brandon Whitworth continuing to lead that GT3 class right now, Andrew, and basically doesn't have to worry too much because Higston right now is stuck behind Marshall Williams, who's 11th in the GTE field, so Whitworth has at least one car of a boundary to him.
And Cisco, that was not the case just a half a lap ago. Hingston had actually caught Whitworth by the 8 of Williams, but then once Whitworth got by the 101, it became a bit of a pain for Hingston to get by the 101, so what almost was a savior for Hingston became a pain in the rear end, and now Hingston's finally going to get by the 101. It looks like there Marshall Williams going to finally give that spot to the second place GT3 car, but it was not easy for Hingston to get around that vehicle, and that is actually the 4th to last car in the GTE class. No, 5th to last car, sorry, Marshall Williams. But Hingston, it seems like he has a pretty good car right now as we're getting the track rubbered in and things are settling in on a lower fuel load and a little bit older tires. It seems like the 282 is just slightly better than Whitworth. We'll see how this battle develops over the course of the race, but right now Whitworth has a lead.
Yeah, Whitworth doing an excellent job at the moment in that 377, continuing to lead your GT3 field. In GTEs, it's been all Tom Stanley and Thomas Peterson right now. Kelly's kind of fallen back. He's about, looks like, I'd say 12 seconds or so behind Tom Stanley. So Stanley has just absolutely just destroyed the field so far in his car, and just out to the races at this point. And his Ferrari done an excellent job.
Yeah, that 961 Ferrari is absolutely flying on the racetrack. He started on pole for the GTEs, even in practice as well. Looking at his practice times, he was a full second in practice faster than Thomas Peterson. So that is definitely the car to beat on GTE. Tom Stanley has got that machine figured out, and he is just flying around this racetrack. But really, it is an endurance race. Anything can happen. What he needs to worry about right now is just being consistent. He doesn't have to put down the fastest race times. He can save a little bit of fuel, save a bit of tires, work the strategy a little bit into his favor, and really just take the time to make these passes. He doesn't have to try to force his way past any of the GT3s he goes by, and he can really just kind of move out of the way of the Daytona prototype. So Tom Stanley sitting in a very good position as long as he plays it smart and plays it safe for the next about hour and a little more than an hour and a half now.
Yeah, and Jason McSparron, Andrew, you saw it a little bit earlier, but he spun around and has lost even more time down. The 119 not having a particularly good race right now.
Yeah, I know we mentioned the lack of assists in the DP, and it's not quite that serious in the GTE car, if I remember right, but the GTE car is still very difficult to hang on to. I'd say, I guess, the GT3 is probably the easiest to drive out here on this track, but none of them are going to be easy. And the GTE car, the Ford GT there of McSparron just got away from him. He went around, and now he's still trying to get a handle on this race car, stays out of the way there. I'm not sure what prototype that is, but gets out of the way easily. And right now, he's just trying to get into things, but also just playing Mr. Nice Guy, letting these guys go by. He knows he's not quite with it. So unfortunate to see McSparron go around, but he's at least taking it in stride and keeping going in this race.
Mike Kelly, meanwhile, in your prototype field, is caught up once again to Ross Banfield, so we'll have to see how this battle shapes up. Kelly, of course, one of the highest drivers in the point standings here coming into today, and something to note, no points differences between your three classes for the drivers running in them, so that means regardless of whatever class you are, you're going to get we're not doing points overall. We're doing points per class. So if you finish first in each class, you get the same number of points as each other, second, third on, and so forth. So Mike Kelly, meanwhile, closing in, looked to the outside that time, but nope, not going to do anything. Look to the inside that time. Still kind of just cruising around right now is the 3 of Mike Kelly, and closing in. He actually got a very good run on Banfield there as we head through the S's now, Kelly.
Yeah, he looked like he was going to try to make a move going going into the S's, but that's not a place you really want to make a pass. It's really going to hinder both drivers if you try to go side by side through the S's. So I think the best place for Mike Kelly is to maybe try to get himself a good launch out of this next hairpin coming up, and draft that 897 machine going down the extremely long back straightaway, and then make a move to the inside going to that next left-hander. So really what he needs to do here is a great launch, which might help that GT3 car is going to maybe hold up Banfield just a little bit, but I think Mike Kelly might just be a little bit too far away from Banfield at the moment, and perhaps his GT3 is actually going to end up getting in his way going into the next corner.
Yeah, and it's closing in. It just doesn't look like the timing worked out the way Kelly wanted it to. We will get past that GT3 here, and still closing in on Ross Banfield here. And that's for your 5th place position overall and in class. And looking back through, Tom Stanley still has now 13 seconds on 2nd place in your GTE field of Thomas Peterson, and then back in your GT3 class, it's about 3 seconds right now between Brandon Whitworth and Patrick Higston here, and we are getting word, Sean Ambrose in the comments section from GSRC, letting us know that yes, it is indeed going to be a one-stop race here for your GT3 and your GTE field. So kind of what I was thinking, Andrew, to the case where these guys probably going to save a little bit of fuel so they don't have to pit that second time.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are more sections of this track where you can be more consistent, I guess, with the gas and the brake rather than being on and off it in a place like Sebring, so you probably can stretch that out, given the fact that you can also run different fuel mixes and not run quite as fast. Whitworth still leading the GT3 class. Yeah, sorry, I got mixed up there, but you mentioned Tom Stanley is just running away with this thing right now. I mean, he's passing up guys like Julian Huxley who are in a DP. Granted, maybe not the quickest DP on the track, but Tom Stanley in the 961 just setting sail, as Mike Kelly continues to get after Ross Banfield. These guys might be having an interesting situation there. They get by one of the slower Mercedes, and now Kelly has an opportunity out of the S's to maybe get at Banfield. We mentioned him setting up Banfield for the draft out of the hairpin. That could be an option this time by Cisco as they come into the hairpin this time.
Yeah, it could be an option here, and Kelly has been closing, but I don't think he's going to make an aggressive move right now, and just content to ride for the moment is the driver of the 3 car. But through the rest of your field, that's your closest battle going on right now. Another close one, actually a little bit closer, is going to be Claude Belleville and Joshua Kanata. That 97 and 56 car, they're going to go around to GT3 here, and Kanata's been kind of falling back to Belleville. They opened up a little bit of a gap there, but still won the closer battles here, and this is for 3rd overall in your GTE field at the moment. So these Ferraris, a lot to play for here, Kelly, right on the cusp of the podium.
Yeah, it looked like Edward Caranci was going to get involved in that, but he's got that GT3, and oh, the GT3 I'm trying to see who that was. Aaron Brown just goes sideways right in front of Caranci. Somehow they both avoid incident, except basically Aaron Brown was just kind of spun that car out, kept it off the wall, and now just going to try to get himself back up to speed. But definitely a scary moment for Caranci, and not one he wanted to see, because that GT3 was holding him up going into the S's. He lost a touch on Belval and Kanata, who are now going to go at it with Dowen as well, kind of getting in between them. That's actually a GTE car that's a lap down. But it looks like Caranci's going to lose a lot of distance after that GT3 spinning out right in front of him.
Yeah, no kidding. And Caranci, who already was kind of falling out of this battle, is now completely out of it. But we watched the battle between Kanata and Belval, and you see that car, that wasn't a car in that battle, rather that was down the 42, continuing to have more issues here. He absolutely missed the corner apex right there, and now going to have to let another car through, but it has not been a good race so far for Josh Dowen. But Kanata and Belval still very close together as they come through some of the final corners here, these last couple 90 degrees before they head back towards the start-finish line and the pit straight once again.
And these guys battling is exactly what Thomas Peterson wants to see. Probably not worrying about these guys too much, but if he was to look at his relative, I think that he'd see Kanata and Belval kind of slowing up a little bit going through this battle. But we do have to kind of watch this 9.56. If he isn't quite up to pace with Kanata, we could have a battle for second place in the GTE class, as Julian Huxley actually loses some more spots. He might have gone for a spin that time around, as he is actually way farther back than he was the previous lap.
Yeah, Huxley has been in the wars, it looks like. Just hasn't been able to get a whole lot of ground in that 322 car. Now going to go around the slower GTE of the number 119 of McSparren once again. McSparren, of course, not having a race at all that he wants, and there goes your leader there, Baxter. And has basically just not had to worry too much. The 888 has been in the lead since the beginning of this thing, is just kind of out in cruise control at the moment as we come to start lap number 15 here from Circuit of the Americas, and hasn't really had to worry too much apart from the start, Kelly. He's just been gone.
Yeah, and speaking of Huxley, looking at his last lap time, it definitely seems like that driver went down pit road, and it's really early to be going down pit road, so there's definitely he had to have some sort of issue that cannot have been a planned pit stop, as we kind of decided that the DPs most likely are going to be able to stretch it into a one-stopper. So now he's going to have to deal with the leader right behind him, and this is probably going to be a bit of a difficult pass for Baxter, as that the 322 machine is not looking like the most stable car on track at the moment. So really Baxter's going to try to get around him as quickly as possible. Now he's actually got some more traffic in front of us, a group of GT3s and GTEs mixed together with Aaron Brown, Simon Thorns, and just ahead of them Mark Lossing is kind of packed up right in front of him.
Yeah, you got Brown there, and then it looks like Simon Thorns right there as well, and like you mentioned, Lossing, and they're all basically going to be dinner for these prototypes, as it looks like Baxter going to dive to the inside the 346 there and get around him, and Baxter only 2 cars left. He's going to have to overtake a tricky section of the track here. It gets a little bit close issues here, and possible issues with the 391 here, Andrew.
Yeah, I actually heard Single Dowdy come over the radio and tell guys that he had a meatball flag. Basically, mandatory repairs needed to be made to that car. He got into a bit of a scrum with the 391 of, sorry, I lost a name on that. That's going to be Brian Barney in the 391. Got into the 66 of Samuel Dowdy a little bit. I'm not sure if we got the contact on the replay yet, but basically, the 66 just kind of missed the corner a little bit on exit, got into the Audi of Barney, sent Barney around, and I think as Dowdy made contact with the 391 again, that kind of just sent him off into the Armco barrier as the two spun, and reportedly again, that was mandatory repairs on the 66 deemed by iRacing.
Yeah, and we're going to take a look now and see if we can figure out what happened, and you see Dowdy there kind of just running and not really sure what the issue was, and I think we're still trying to find that particular moment here and looking for where that 391 is. There he is, so we will get kind of a longer look at this. You can see the GT3 car go wide there, and the Audi looks like he might shoot the gap, and yeah, just did, and just gets a little bit tagged in. It's massive contact there as the 391 went around. The Ferrari ended up in the barrier, and yep, into the grass goes the Audi. So not a good situation for that passing Audi for Brian Barney, and he had to bring it down pit road, as did the 66 of Dowdy. So it's going to be a long day for those guys here with just under an hour and a half left to go here.
And speaking of pit stops, Chuck Chambliss in that 909 machine just pitted from the 3rd overall position, and you got to wonder if that's maybe a strategy call. Maybe he doesn't think they can go on one stop and he wants to just do a quick early stop and maybe stretch this next one out a little bit. But that's or maybe he can make it on one stop and he just need to do it enough in that maybe he thinks he can go an hour and a half on a single tank and pitting early, and then just kind of pit early and cruise around. But or, you know, you never know what he's got going on there, because I don't think there was anything wrong with that race car. It looks like that car is completely clean, and he had some great pace on the racetrack, so you just got to wonder why he came down pit road.
Yeah, not sure. The 909 right now, see him going around Ivo Andorini right there, and Wellman not too far behind him as well. And Wellman, actually, that's going to be a battle position with Chambliss if he can't get away, but was looking at the leader to see if there was going to be a response from Steven Baxter. There's not. He'll continue to stay on track here. So the 909, only car so far out of your prototype field, at least competitive-wise, who's come down pit road. Also, Rick Scott just coming out of pit road now. The 60 car, he just left going through the first turn right now, so he decided to come down pit road, and it's fallen down a little bit from where he started, but with that pit stop makes sense. Huxley, we already noted, he came to pit road not of his own volition, but rather it might have been a short pit or might have been some damage, but either way, he's in a big deal right now, and right behind him is Sherlocker right now, that second place car, and all over the back bumper right now of looks like it's gonna get a little bit loose there, but of Huxley, and Huxley gonna be a little bit of a block here, not really where Schlacker wants to be right now.
No, definitely not.
And again, there goes Huxley. Oh, he's able to hold on to it.
Big slide out of the 322. Quickly want to wrap back to the conversation we had just a moment ago about pit stops with the C7s. It seems like these guys can pretty much make it about 28 laps in the C7 based on some information in the chat. I guess they have a smaller fuel tank than their counterparts on the racetrack, but it was still early to see guys like Chambliss and Rick Scott in the pits, but I guess not totally out of the realm of possibilities, as it looks like Mike Kelly may have just had a moment here. He's complaining on the radio to somebody.
We'll see if we can wind back the camera and find out what happened with the 3 here.
It was a GT3 car.
Okay, we might. Yeah, I can see he caught some lap traffic here. We'll take a look at from the chopper cam and see if we can find out what happened. You see Kelly rolling. We backed the camera about a minute, so he should be able to catch whatever happened. So coming under the Pirelli bridge right here, and there's a prototype in front of him and a GT3 that gets a little bit loose. Oh, and it kind of dive bomb and blocked a little bit for Kelly there, and that's the 346. Of Aaron Brown. So that was the issue Kelly had, and Brown just tried to save the car and nearly took out Mike Kelly's front nose clip there. So that was the issues Mike Kelly had on the racetrack there, and you could tell not happy at all with the driver, the 346 there.
And it looks like there is a slight bit of damage on the front end of that 3 machine, and that also made him lose a lot of ground to Ross Banfield, which was, I think, the main issue that he had, is that he was trying to make a move for position to get himself into 4th, and now he's lost at least 3 seconds on Banfield after that little incident. So definitely a problem for him, and I can see why he's not too happy.
Yeah, that was definitely a tough situation, but he's going to have to make all that ground back up to Banfield here, either over the pit stops or just on pure speed alone. So we'll just have to see. We'll come back to that story in a little bit. Claude Belval and Josh Kanata, the story continues with these two, the 97, the 56, still very close together and kind of almost running in a pack. Haven't really seen any moves out of Belval to try and get that spot away. This is still for your third in class in GTE. So these two drivers and closing up right there, but still running nose to tail, at least for the moment.
And further back in your GTE battle, Whitworth has actually kind of stretched his legs by quite a bit over Whitworth. Whitworth has stretched his legs over Hingston. Man, it seems like these guys could be getting close to pit stops. We actually saw the 101 come through the pit lane of Marshall Williams, so we could see some of these guys actually go for a 2-stop race rather than a 1-stop race. Maybe guys just pushing the tires harder, and maybe with a slightly smaller fuel load to have a lighter car at the start of the race and have a lighter car pretty much throughout the race and just come in and pretty much go for it. Actually, it looks like Aaron Brown goes off the track. He had a bit of a moment there as he's going to hold up Whitworth.
Yeah, and the 346, that's the second incident so far where he's gotten in the way of some drivers, so it's gotten a little bit hairy for him lately, and we'll take a second look at this here and see what we can see from above. And the 346 comes into this hard-braking left-hander and dives it in, and completely missed the corner and trying to come back on track. You see the 377 right there trying to go around, and he'll just get by that car, but Aaron Brown not having a good day at all behind the wheel, and it has been one thing after another, it seems like, for Brown. And you can see kind of in the back of your picture here some cars catching up to him. But yeah, the 346, Andrew, has not been a not been having a good day is another car. We're going to lose Samuel Dowdy, it sounds like. 66 has left and parked the car for today. So, meanwhile, it looks like that's our second casualty of the race so far. The other one being Jerry Forkold there in that 676.
Yeah, going back up, though, to the GTEs, Claude Belval still all over the rear bumper of the 97 of Joshua Kanata. Belval trying to taking a couple peeks in these last few corners here as we get to the really tough and technical final sector. He's going to try to get on the inside out of this corner, but can't quite get the power down where Kanata is able to, and actually going to lose a bit of ground, which is surprising because Kanata went wide on that corner, and when you go wide, you see that green there, that is AstroTurf, and there is absolutely no grip on that. So the fact that Kanata was actually able to somehow get the power down and get a bit of a lead on Belval is surprising, but I don't think Belval's about to give up yet. But it's also seeming like Belval's not really pushing the issue. Seems like he's content to sit and just ride in this position right now, and maybe he's just trying to save some fuel by riding the draft a little bit of that 97 machine. But actually, here he comes now. He's going to dive it up to the inside, so forget what I was just saying. Belval making a huge move in turn one, and he's going to take away that third position for the GTEs.
Yeah, and we were expecting a move eventually, but I guess he was just being patient and waiting for his move to make that pass. So Belval going to move into third in class, and that'll put him 12th overall here. So Belval sitting in a very good position right now in his Ferrari GTE. Meanwhile, Stefan Sherlocker, he's down pit road. Mike Kelly, he's down pit road. So lap 20 looked like the key for the prototypes deciding to come in here. So strategy being played. That tells me, Andrew, that we're probably going to expect them for one more stop. So they are going to two-stop this thing.
Yeah, I'd say at least the DPs will have to come in for 2 stops or more as the leader, Stephen Baxter, works through that battle that we were actually just talking about with Kanata and Belval. Caranci had actually caught right up to Kanata and had to give way to the leader of Baxter. Now Baxter might have to get through a couple of slower cars. This will be Belval and someone else. Looks like maybe an Audi ahead of him, possibly Jose Pabon. It is Jose Pabon, as he'll actually give way to Baxter and Belval. And that was actually pretty tame for what it could have been.
Yeah, it's definitely getting a little bit interesting. We noted, kind of talking amongst ourselves at the top of the show, only 2 Audis in this entire field here, so the BOP changes for Sebring not really helping these guys a whole lot out, and it makes sense, Kelly. A lot of flat and long top speed corners here. That's just naturally going to kind of benefit the Mercedes here with that AMG power. The Audi a lot better on the technical corners. Not really a place where, not really the MO of this circuit.
Yeah, that Audi will probably be a lot better through the last sector of this track where it's very slow, very technical, but there's these huge straightaways that are on this racetrack, like the back straight and the front straight, that really just play right into the hands of these Mercedes, and it's not too surprising to see the choices that have been made for these cars.
Absolutely, but ticker right now telling us that we're on lap number 21 so far, and about an hour 19 left to go. We'll run you through what your results look like for the moment here. Stefan Baxter right now continuing to lead. Riley Thompson, Ross Banfield, Stefan Schlacker right now running in the 4th position. Mike Kelly running 5th. Lonnie Fitch 6th. 7th to Carl Burke. 8th going to go to Chuck Chambliss. 9th to Terry Wellman. And Tom Stanley runs out your top 10 right now, Kelly.
Thomas Peterson is currently sitting in 11th overall, and he's the last car to remain on the lead lap. Claude Belval currently sitting in 12th. Joshua Kanata 13th. 14th is Edward Caranci. Rick Scott sitting in 15th. 16th is at 77 of Michael Lightly. Julian Huxley in 17th. 18th is Mark Lossing. Simon Thorns in 19th. And rounding out the top 20 is the 21 of Terry Halleck.
In 21st overall, we get to Eric Klein in the 5.42, followed by Brandon Whitworth, your GT3 leader in the 3.77. Hingston actually lost that position. He goes to 23rd overall, 2nd in class. Rory Collins currently 3rd in class, 24th overall, followed by Ivo Andreini, one of the GTE cars in the 605. Mark Blandowski has fallen to 26th overall in the 82 DP. Eddie Hawks now in 27th overall, followed by Daniel Knight, Brandon Barney, and Jason Wallet to round out your top 30 overall on the track.
And then Jose Pabon in one of those Audis, 31st. Randy Ludwig, running 32nd, 33rd to Marshall Williams, 34th to James Down. Aaron Brown running 35th. Jason McSparron, 36th, 37th to Craig Hawkins, and then Samuel Dowdy and Jerry Forkolb right now rounding out 38th, 39th. Those two cars have left the circuit this evening, but I was looking for Blendowski to try and find and where he is. Right now running 12th in class and way down in your order right now in Blendowski. It has been a very long day for that prototype.
Yeah, he has just been struggling all night long, and he is basically the lowest running Daytona prototype that is still on the track. He's just trying to find himself a groove, but that car does look like it's in good shape at the moment. It doesn't look like I can see any visible damage on that machine, so he does have that going for him, which is really, in an endurance race, a very important thing. So as long as he keeps the car clean, he had a chance to still pick up a few positions as other drivers gets a few issues.
Yeah, and it was Baxter actually coming down pit road, so he's made his stop now, and that's left Riley Thompson in control of the field here, and Ross Banfield running second. So change up now, so Baxter going to come out third, and still very much in front of Stefan Schlacker there. He's just coming through the first corner right now, going around that 747 GT3 car. Baxter, meanwhile, already through a lot of the S's here, so Baxter to a very healthy lead for the moment.
And Riley Thompson will make up some ground. I'm not sure whether or not he will actually make a pass. It looks like he actually may have. Anyways, further on back, Ross Banfield has made some positions, it looks like, over Stefan Schlacker and Chuck Chambliss. Meanwhile, Mike Kelly just a moment ago was working his way through some traffic in class. That was Terry Wellman he was getting by about a lap ago, and that has now settled itself out. Tom Stanley, meanwhile, has gotten by the DP of Lonnie Fitch. Tom Stanley still has not pitted. I believe Fitch may have, which gives the position overall to the 961. Thomas Peterson still has not come in. Most of these guys, as was mentioned previously in the show, won't probably be coming in that are in the GTE and GT3 classes until about halfway in this race. Then we'll see the pits really open up for those two classes, and I think we'll see them all pretty much come in at pretty much within the same amount of time, maybe 2 or 3 laps, where I think most of them will come in and get service to their vehicles and be on their way. Claude Belval has settled into third in GTE, and from there on, it's pretty spread out. Caranci, though, has Kanana not too far behind, but even they're spread out by quite a bit. Actually, Caranci goes off track.
Yeah, Caranci just went way off track, the Michelin Ford, and he's able to work that car back onto the racetrack there, the Michelin and Sunoco colors on board that machine. And meanwhile, they're all going past Barney, the other Audi here. Jose Pabon and Brian Barney, your two Audis in your GT3 field, running 6th and 8th. So they're not dead last, but they're some of the last cars in this field. And like we talked about, those Audis just not seeming like they are very potent here at Circuit of the Americas. But Tom Stanley going around the 346, that green GT3 of Aaron Brown once again, and that car's been in our pictures a lot lately. Meanwhile, it looks like we've lost another lap according to timing here. Only 59 laps now being estimated to be completed here at Circuit of the Americas, as Riley Thompson continues to lead the field at the moment because Stephen Baxter made his pit stop, and looking for Stefan Schlacker. He's back in the 4th position. So run through the rest of your field right now to try and find stuff. Kanata and Karanasi, I just can't pronounce that name apparently right now. Caranci, thank you, Cisco. Brain decided to turn on finally, but that's a close battle. And then Julian Huxley and Michael Lightly, that's not really a battle because Huxley is basically just going to blow by that Ferrari, but starting to try and make up a little bit of time. The good news for Huxley is next car up the road in terms of position-wise, Kelly, is another prototype. It's Rick Scott in the 60. And Huxley, who's been battling early issues here and just trying to fight through your field, is finally going to be able to start making passes, or at least a pass for position in class for once.
Yeah, I'm trying to see the gap between these cars, and it looks to be quite large as Rick Scott is just heading towards that last corner right now, and Huxley is still in the final sector. So there's still quite a bit of ground for Huxley to pick up before he can try to get himself a on-track position, but he does have the opportunity coming up, and Going back to this battle between Caranci and Kanata just a few laps ago, Kanata was leading Caranci, and Caranci was able to make the move on Kanata, and Kanata's just been kind of dropping back ever since Belval was able to get around him, and that's it seems like he's just not quite got the pace anymore, as Caranci's slowly opening up a gap over him lap after lap. So Kanata's got to figure out what's going on in his race car. He may have possibly burnt off those tires a little bit.
Yeah, and going wide there is the GT3 car, and that was Daniel Knight in that Mercedes AMG, and he lost all sorts of time doing that, and is going to fall into the clutches now of Riley Thompson, your leader. And no, I absolutely agree, Kelly. I think this is a case where he did just burn up his stuff way too soon here, and we're expecting these GT3s to try and pit right before halfway. We're about 12 minutes from that, so if you're Josh Kanata, you gotta start thinking, can you save enough, or are you gonna lose too much time here if you burned up all your stuff? He's gonna be in big time trouble if that's the case. The good news for him is it's about 20 seconds or so down the road to Mike Golightly, so there is still very much time for Kanata to give before he loses another spot there. But if he wants to stay with Caranci and Belval, he's got to start picking up the pace here.
And speaking of Belval, he just worked by Rory Collins. Rory Collins actually not Rory Collins. It was a different car. I think I might have been watching Daniel Knight still. But anyways, Belval having a pretty decent run since he got away from Caranci and Kanata, has pretty much just left those two. We could be talking about him. I've just been watching the times between him and Peterson. It seems like he's actually starting to work up towards second place Thomas Peterson, which would be for second place. Lonnie Fitch behind Tom Stanley. So that's a DP that they would have to work through, not to mention the lap traffic that these guys have to deal with. Tom Stanley, though, in a zip code of his own, has literally just left the rest of the GTE field, and that's not even an exaggeration at this point, Cisco. It is just a crazy run right now from these 961. Hey, it's still, I mean, this track is pretty long, pretty elongated. I think it could almost be different zip codes when you're talking about from the front straightaway to the hairpin at the far end of the track. But still, Tom Stanley, just an utterly great run right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 30 seconds right now, the gap between the two, and Peterson now going to finally catch. That's Fitch, or no, that's not Fitch, in front of Thomas. That's Evo right there. Andreini right there in another Ferrari, and going a lap down to kind of just falling through your field. The 605 has had a dismal race so far. Started 28th, up 26th, so kind of along those lines, you know, has been gaining positions, but still nowhere near where he needs to be able to get back up to Eric Klein, the next car in line for him, the 10th car in class. And Klein right now crossing your start-finish line, and Andreini still has plenty of time to make up there, so that's not going to happen, I think, for a while here, even if it happens at all here, Kelly.
Yeah, just talking about how fast Tom Stanley is, he's currently keeping a Daytona prototype behind him. He has been flying through these corners, and it's just unreal the grip that he has found in that 961 Ferrari. And I think he just found something in his setup to keep that car absolutely planted around this track, because there has been no real weaknesses that have been shown by the 961 machine. He's had no moments at all that car has just kept himself completely just grounded underneath of him, and he is flying around this racetrack, and he's so fast that the 26 of Lonnie Fitch is actually having problems trying to catch up to him and get around him.
Yeah, and Fitch, meanwhile, is 9th right now in your prototype class, 10th overall, and Tom Stanley's the only car that's not a prototype in your top 10 right now, Andrew. So, I mean, if that doesn't tell you how fast Tom Stanley is in that Ferrari, I mean, he is, you said another zip code. How about he's operating at a speed above everybody else, at least in his class. This is dominance right now from Tom Stanley. As finally goes Lonnie Fitch by.
Yeah, the big straightaway going to play into Lonnie Fitch's hands, as he's going to work by the 961. But here comes Stanley right back, almost for a crossover. But no, you say the 961 is operating on a quicker speed. That's actually true. I just looked at the lap times between the 961 in first and the 956 in second. It's literally a few seconds difference. So the 961 has this figured out. Obviously, I think unless something happens, car-to-car contact, we have to almost write him in as the winner. at least in the GTE class. But back to the GT3 class, Brandon Whitworth has pretty much elongated his lead by quite a bit, actually, over Hingston. Hingston looks like his car was good for a little bit over the long run, and then about halfway through this hour-long run has just fallen off since. Isn't too far behind Whitworth, but not making up time like he was before. And Rory Collins in third, pretty much just there by virtue of not getting into anything, as Eddie Hawks seems like actually has a better feel on that race car.
Yeah, Eddie Hawks has been working his way up through the field so far today. Started 32nd overall, is now 27th overall, running 4th in class. So it's been kind of a slow but progressively getting a little bit better day for that Workiva machine. So Brandon Whitworth, though, meanwhile, continuing to lead, but that gap kind of fluctuates between himself and Higston here. So we're going to keep an eye on that 282 to see if he can close the gap a little bit on the 377 there. Not quite in the same camera frame just yet, but it's starting to go that way, actually.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to mention at the front of the field, actually, Banfield is starting to catch Thompson. That might be something to look at here as the run goes on.
Yeah, it will, and yeah, Kelly, Banfield right now having to deal with a lot of lap traffic there, but coming down the hill now is the 897. And yeah, nope, starting to close the gap. It's about 4 seconds now between Thompson and Banfield.
A few laps ago, it was actually 2 seconds, I believe, after Stefan pitted, but it looks like Banfield's just struggling with the lap traffic right now. He caught him in, honestly, the worst possible spot, and that's the S's, and especially since Aaron Brown, again, struggling with the grip on that Mercedes, and he just does not have that thing dialed in, and I think he may need to possibly turn the traction control a few clicks up because that car is struggling through the S's, and he nearly went around again and pretty much almost the exact same place we saw him spin out last time. So that definitely held up Banfield a little bit. And I think Thompson's going to be happy to see that that lead has grown even more.
And this is going to be an interesting battle because Aaron Brown and James Down have both been struggling today, and both those cars basically in a fight now for a between class battle. That's 10th for Brown right now overall in your GT3 field, and 13th overall or 13th in class, I should say, for James Dowan. So those two, though, kind of next to each other in the overall standings, and you can see Dowan looking to the outside right now, and both of these cars have not had a good day at all here, Andrew, but nonetheless, they're going to do a little bit of battle here, and this is really where we're going to see the cornering speed of the Ferrari be able to overcome some of the power that Mercedes AMG, but you can see Brown just drive away on the straightaways. That's how fast that car is.
Yeah, these Mercedes really have, you know, big motors like we've talked about, and monster brakes almost. When you get down to the end of one of these straightaways, you literally can just stand on the brake pedal, and you really won't have an issue as long as you get the timing right. You see Aaron Brown having some issues there, actually letting Stephen Baxter by. Stephen Baxter now has clawed his way back into third position as he tries to pursue Ross Banfield and Riley Thompson, but he shouldn't get too far ahead of himself because as Riley Thompson actually comes in for the first time all race, I was just about to mention they haven't pitted yet. Well, now Riley Thompson hits the pit lane in the 283, but Ross Banfield still has not pitted just yet, which, I mean, this is longer than we really expected for these guys to go. We've now gone just 4.5 minutes shy of half of this race. So actually, as the car goes off track, I'm not sure which DP that was.
Blendowski.
Blendowski goes around.
We'll take a second look at that. Meanwhile, Riley Thompson still was getting service there, so Banfield continuing to lead there. But yeah, let's find out what happened to Blendowski here. He's coming down. We're going to catch up with him starting here on this front straightaway. It was in the S's where he was kind of parked off to the side, so we're going to see what happened. But probably it looked like just a self-spin incident here, Kelly, but Blendowski, you can see him go through turn number 1 right now, and everything looks okay, at least for the moment.
Yeah, I was just taking a look at it. It looks like it's pretty much the top of the S's. I guess he was just went too hot into the corner and kind of gave the brakes a little bit of a tap, and really these cars, you got to drive them straight, and he just threw off the balance of the machine and spun himself around. Luckily was able to keep it off the wall, and all it really cost him was some time. As yeah, you now see it on screen what just happened to that machine, and luckily no damage, just a little bit of damage to his track position, so that car will stay on track for the moment.
And the good thing was he kind of waited for the lap traffic to pass here, and Andrew, if you spin out, you do not want to accelerate and get yourself right back on track if you have lap traffic coming, because that's going to just result in a massive accident. So you want to avoid that at all costs, as Ross Banfield actually going to make the left-hand turn onto pit road.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that, Cisco. You want to wait for the perfect opportunity. You don't want to enter too early, but you also don't want to sit there waiting for so long that you just lose more time than you have to. But Blendowski got right back on the track when he needed to. Not too much of an issue after the initial spin as they continue on. You mentioned Ross Banfield coming into pit. This should, and I say should, turn the lead back over to Baxter, and it does actually. He's already well past the 897 of Banfield. So Stephen Baxter back to the lead. That at least works out our leading class, the prototype class, but now we have to get ready for pit stops from the other two classes. GTE should be coming in any time, followed by GT3.
Yeah, Tom Stanley continuing to lead by a zip code, a postcode, an arm's reach, a whatever other metaphors you want to use here for how big of a lead Tom Stanley has on the rest of his GTE field here. And Stephen Baxter, meanwhile, and looks like Peterson having a little bit of issues there, but he's able to hold on to the car, so everything good over there. But the Caranassi and Kanata battle, and I'm going to pronounce Edwards' name apparently different every time I say it, but the 23 and the 97 has opened up a little bit of a gap. It's now 2 seconds between these two cars, and Caranti has been able to kind of drive away from Kanata, so looks like the tires on the 97 still not really working with him right now.
Now he's still not in a groove, not able to keep up with Caranci, but he's still in a decent position.
We're gonna let Kelly find his voice again, and Andrew. Yeah, no, just a case here as we try and recover from that. Kanata just doesn't look like he's found his grip in the car.
Yeah, no, Kanata seems like he really worked the wheel a little too much in the first bit of this stint. I mean, certainly still has a good car at this point, just not quite as good as his counterparts in the GTE class. Meanwhile, Whitworth continues to lead GT3, and we mentioned Stanley still leading GTE. Well, we actually had the two GT leaders in frame for just a moment there as Stanley went by Whitworth, and now Whitworth goes a lap down to the GTE car. Stanley, that just kind of is another, I guess, testament to how quick that 961 is. Another one is that there's only one lead lap GTE car halfway through this race, and that is Tom Stanley. So just what a run for the guy. But further back, it seems like Simon Thorns is a guy we haven't really talked about. Mike Golightly as well. Mark Lossing. These guys are kind of just having a really quiet race right now, quite settled into the speedway and just running this race.
And yeah, Thorns right now running 7th in class in your GTE field, and as you can see, they're 17th overall. Golightly in the 77 running 16th overall and running 6th in class, and those two are behind Kanata and Carinci there, and Mark Lossing also the 743, that red and white car there. He's running 8th in class in your GTE field here, but just getting ready. Yeah, we have crossed the halfway portion at this point. Less than an hour to go here as the 391 heads to pit road. We'll take a look at your midway race break once pit stops kind of cycle here, but Brian Barney kicking it off here in the Audi comes down pit road, and looking to see Jose Pabon continuing to stay out at least for the moment, but first car in the Audi, so things already still not working out for Brian Barney nor Jose Pabon. They're at least being able to maintain pace here, but yeah, no pit. This should signal pit stops for both GTE and GT3.
Tom Stanley, though, electing to continue to stay out for at least another lap, and that puts him up to 8th overall. He's got 2 Daytona prototypes behind him. He is the only GTE on the lead lap and the only GTE in that top 10. So that 961 machine is absolutely
Kelly's around. Oh, Aaron Brown. We're hearing the 346 and more issues for him as we're going to take a second look, and possibly this was issues with between Kelly and Brown. Possibly, Aaron, you saw it, or Andrew, you saw it.
Yeah, it was down at the far end of the track, and really just Kelly was trying to go around the slower car, of Aaron Brown, and Brown, of course, couldn't really go too much further left, but maybe should have backed the corner up a little bit more, just got into the left rear of Kelly. It's hard to really put blame on either one in this situation, actually, because Brown can't go too much farther to the left without just nailing the apex of the curbing, and you don't want to nail the curbing in one of these cars, no matter which class it is, but, Kelly, of course, has the right of way in that situation, so it's tough to really diagnose that and put blame on anyone. Just really unfortunate for Mike Kelly as he was starting to settle into that number 3 car and just ended up going around.
Yeah, and if you're keeping score at home, this is the second incident that these two have had so far in the race, and we'll keep an eye on these two, because knowing Mike Kelly, he comes from way back in the day. I've seen him race plenty of stock cars here on LSRTV in the past, so Kelly gonna try and keep his cool, but that's gotta be frustrating, Kelly, considering that, you're running 5th in class. Now, look at that. All of a sudden, Ross Banfield is right back on your rear spoiler, and all because of lap traffic.
Yeah, and Mike Kelly's now struggling through the S's that last time around. He slid quite a few times. I thought that car was going to snap on him, and here comes Banfield trying to make a move.
He goes around!
Kelly cuts him off, just leaves him nowhere to go, and they're going to get into each other again.
That was a carbon copy of what just happened a lap ago, and Mike Kelly, second time going through the hairpin at the top of the racetrack, and it all goes wrong. We'll get a second look at that, but...
Well, let's watch into the left-hander here. Kelly in the braking zone. Looks but doesn't take. We'll get that replay up for you, but what a big moment there for guys battling for the top 5 in the DP class.
Yep, and that was quite, I would say, a little bit more of a dive bomb there from Ross Banfield than I think was absolutely necessary. We mentioned that Banfield seemed to have a little bit better of a car here, and Andrew, I don't agree with the move down the inside, especially on that part of the racetrack.
No, and Banfield, of course, got there by virtue of the 3 going around with help from Aaron Brown. So I'm not sure that was the greatest move for Banfield to pull right there. Maybe should have waited, at least, if nothing else, just for Kelly to cool down before making that move. Might not have been a bad decision, but of course, as a race car driver, if an opportunity comes your way, you don't want to pass it up. As we see Rory Collins in the 35 hit the pit lane, and it looks like Jason Wallet as well out of the GT3 class. But yeah, you see Mike Kelly driving really hot. I'm not sure Banfield should have made that move when he did, whether it was a big move with contact or not, because you see the result, and driving with a hot Mike Kelly is not something you want to do.
Nope, and the gap is closing here, and we'll keep an eye on these two. Meanwhile, we'll also keep an eye on this when we see the leaders coming down pit road for your other 2 classes. But yeah, you can tell Kelly is driving, like you said, fairly hot for the moment here, Kelly, and you have to be sure. I know he's not terribly happy with Banfield, but he doesn't want to do anything here that would ignite anything else. But locking up also, that's going to be Blendowski locking up going into the hairpin here, and that got all sorts out of shape there, and he lost a ton of time. Going to let all these cars by, but Blendowski, another driver who's just had a very, very, very long day.
And Mike Kelly actually losing a lot of ground to Banfield going through the S's that time, and it was basically the same thing as last lap. That car is not stable going through the S's. They were a lot of sliding, a lot of tire smoke, and really that's what allowed Banfield to open up this gap and continue to hold this gap. But it looks like Kelly's starting to close it up just a little bit, and I'm sure if he gets any opportunity, he's going to try to dive bomb Banfield just like Banfield kind of dived in on him. So I'm sure Banfield's going to be a little bit nervous and just trying his best to open up a gap over Mike Kelly at this moment.
Yeah, it will, but since the leaders still haven't yet come down pit road, nope, they haven't yet, but there are still cars on pit road. So I was going to run us through our halfway break, but not quite yet. So it's going to come probably in about 6 or 7 minutes here as we'll take a look through your field once again. Tom Stanley, though, continuing to lead the GTEs, and really, I don't think that sentence is going to change before the end of this race. And Brandon Whitworth, at this point, he's one of the few GT3 cars who hasn't pitted. Also, Daniel Knight and Aaron Brown, the other 2 who haven't yet. So actually just waiting on your leading GT3, that 377, to actually come down pit road to kind of complete the cycle of the GT3s here.
And Cisco, Big moment there as Steven Schlacher is working up to maybe try and keep tabs on Steven Baxter. I say keep tabs on him, he's 20 seconds behind, but we just saw a big moment through the S's and down towards the far end of the speedway. Schlacher was actually working through some lap traffic. It was a GTE car and a GT3 car, so it was really interesting because you had the GT3 car, the slowest of the bunch, leading the three vehicles, GTE in the middle, and it really didn't quite work out. The Mercedes was, I believe, the 747 of, let me find him, Randy Ludwig, who looks like he has some damage to his Mercedes AMG GT3. Meanwhile, there was a Ferrari in the middle, didn't catch the number, and then Schlacher at the very back of that little train, and that could have been a lot worse, but that's an example of guys really working through lap traffic with a cool head.
Yeah, and just timing worked out a little bit better there, but definitely going to be the case as we grab the chopper, fly it over above Mike Kelly and Ross Banfield, who have closed up here and very close together now. And Kelly going to look to the inside, and he's there on Banfield. So let's stay with these two for a moment because that gap is down to nil, and Kelly definitely dived it in on that one corner there.
Yeah, this battle is heated up, and we know as earlier there was a bit of contact between these two drivers, and Mike Kelly has not forgotten it. Just very frustrated after also getting caught up with some lap traffic, and I think here he's going to try to make a move to the inside, possibly going into the hairpin, as long as he can get a good launch off this corner. Last few times he wasn't able to get a good turn out of the last turn, but that time looking a lot better. So watch him going into the hairpin this time around if he's going to try to make a move using the draft now, and actually electing to stay a little bit wide, which is surprising. Bit of a lock up there from Banfield, but now Kelly's going to get to the inside. It's not quite enough speed off of the hairpin, so going down the hill, it's still Banfield to the lead, and Banfield's been better through the S's, and we'll see if Kelly can keep that car planted.
Yeah, and going through the S's now, we're on board with Kelly, and just so far everything looking, he's made a couple moves, but I don't think he's going to try anything. If he wanted to wreck the car in front, he would have done it at this point. So I think for Mike Kelly, it's just keep your head on straight and make the pass cleanly. It's a little bit of a two-wheel drift there from Ross Banfield coming out of the S's there as we head towards the infamous hairpin here at the top of the racetrack, and it lock up a little bit there from Banfield, but these two nose to tail as they come down the long back straightaway. Hello, draft. This could be helpful to Mike Kelly if he's close enough.
And as these guys work by the Audi of Brian Barney, we did see, hopefully off to the side, we saw Caranci come into the pit lane, but the big battle here, again, Kelly and Banfield. I think Kelly is kind of employing the strategy of the best way to get back at a guy is to just flat out beat him. So I think Kelly is just keeping in tow, keeping his tires in check actually as he locks up there into the corner. But I don't think he's trying to push that car so hard that he wrecks it, and I definitely don't think he wants to wreck Banfield. Or again, as you mentioned, Cisco, he would have done it by now. So I think he's just trying to I guess, wait for a good moment to get by Banfield and just get back at him by beating him. That really seems like the best idea to me.
And Caranci and a lot of your GT3 or GTE field rather have come down pit road. Belval, Peterson have all come down. Canada still waiting on Thorns and still waiting on Tom Stanley. I'm thinking we're going to see Tom Stanley in this time here, but also drivers who still haven't pit. Daniel Knight in the 295, that GT3 machine. Aaron Brown continuing to stay out and on fumes at this point, you have to think, and James Dowen here. Those cars have not pit as lock up there. James Dowen, just, I guess, perfect time to cut to him because he nearly just ran into issues with Lonnie Fitch there. They're all able to hold on to it. There is Tom Stanley kind of working through everybody here and looking to see when we see our GTE leader in, and look back to see Kelly and Banfield have caught lap traffic. It's the 45. It's another green GT3 car, but this could hot things up just a little bit here.
Yep, Mike Kelly trying to see how he can get through the GT3s here, and a little bit of complaints from the crew chief of Eddie Hawks, just saying complaining about the DPs just being aggressive, and I don't think he understands why these DPs are being aggressive. They are in a battle for position, and they are in definitely a hot battle for position between the history between those two drivers. So I'm sure that does make Eddie Hawks and his crew chief is a little bit nervous, but here comes Mike Kelly. He's got to run down the back straight this time, and going into the corner, they are going to be side by side.
Ooh, give each other a little bit of room. No, they're not going to. maybe contact there, couldn't tell, but Banfield gonna stay strong and he's gonna lock it up there. Kelly might try it on the outside, but yeah, if I was any of the lap traffic, I'd give these guys plenty of space.
Oh,
right now.
Banfield! Oh, he almost went around. Sorry to cut you off, Cisco. That was a crazy corner for Banfield. He gets back into it, but we almost had a big wreck with these two as they're still side by side through the flat technical corners. Give the advantage to Mike Kelly now.
Yeah, this is going to get sketchy here. Is Kelly going to try and complete the pass? Are we going to see the undercut here from Banfield? This may not be over yet. Banfield going to dive it in again, and Kelly going to cut off the nose. He is not happy. And finally, at least for the moment, Kelly going to cut off the nose, and maybe for the moment has the position. But Banfield has that draft. Does he send it in here as we head back to turn number 1?
Yeah, a little bit of lap.
Yes, he does.
A little bit of lap traffic this time here, and Banfield going to get right up to the bumper of Mike Kelly, and we'll have to see now. I think it's going to be built up towards the hairpin at the far end of the racetrack, because we've seen Banfield be faster through the S's, and he's also got some lap traffic ahead of them once again. Oh, a bit of a clip on that curb from Kelly, and this is probably going to be what bunches them up. There's that GT car getting in the way just a little bit, and Banfield just trying to see if he can stick with Mike Kelly and find a good place to pass. Again, they're going to get to catch up to another GT3 machine as they head towards this really what's become just an infamous hairpin. We've seen many incidents here throughout the night, and let's see, Kelly's going to be able to get through there clean. That GT3 car is going to run wide. A little bit of wobble from Kelly and a little slight wobble from Banfield, but here comes down the straightaway. Banfield going to use the draft as much as possible.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Tom Stanley did come down pit road. He's pitted and still out to a huge lead over the rest of the field. Brandon Whitworth right now has a decent gap, about 12 seconds over GT3s. So we're going to stay with these guys until they finally start to give each other a little bit of ground. And I thought Banfield might have something for him there. It looks like that 897 car just looking for the opportunity to get past Kelly here is going to try and do it clean, though.
Yeah, Banfield seems like has the better car right now, and it was almost the reverse earlier on in the race when Kelly was chasing Banfield down for the first time all day. But now, as you know, we've seen a couple of incidents, at least, with these guys. Kelly he has a good car in some corners, but it seems like overall Banfield has the car to beat right now, at least among these two, but just can't do anything with it now that he's back behind Kelly. And it almost seems like Banfield just made a mistake the first time they got into each other, because now you see him into these heavy braking zones, not making any big, desperate moves. So I have to wonder what exactly was going on the first time we saw these guys run into each other down in the hairpin, getting ready to go down the back straightaway, because it almost now seems just like an outlier event to me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Andrew. It might have just been an isolated deal, but Kelly's starting to open up that gap a little bit. So while we have a lull, I say a lull, it's not really much of a lull, but we're going to run you through your midway race break here, brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. iRacing has been developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition platform, and is the official sim racing group for series like NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Global Rally Cross, the Cars Tour, and many more here on iRacing. Stephen Baxter continuing to lead the field, your leader in prototypes and overall. Stefan Schlacker running second, and I thought Banfield spun out, but he just got a little bit loose there. Chuck Chambliss third. Fourth going to be Riley Thompson. Mike Kelly running fifth. Sixth to Ross Banfield. Seventh to Carl Burke. Terry Wellman running eighth. Lonnie Fitch running ninth in your C7. Your first prototype, or your first GTE car, that's Tom Stanley in the 961 running 10th.
11th overall is a Daytona prototype, Rick Scott. Thomas Peterson running in 12th overall. Claude Belleval in 13th. 14th is Julian Huxley. Joshua Kanata sitting in 15th. 16th is Edward Crancy. Simon Thorne sitting in 17th. 18th is Mike Golightly. Mark Lossing is sitting in 19th. And rounding out the top 20 is Terry Halleck.
Still in 21st overall, we get to Eric Klein in the 542 GTE Ford GT. Brandon Whitworth is still your GT3 leader over Patrick Hingston. That's actually a pretty big gap there now. That's 22nd and 23rd overall. Then Marshall Williams and Ivo Andriini. Actually, they swap spots now by the start-finish line. Rory Collins in 26th overall. Daniel Knight 27th. Jose Pabon in one of the only two Audis on the track in 28th. Eddie Hawks in 29th. And Brian Barney rounding out your top 30 in the other Audi.
Yeah, and then Jason Wallet, the Mercedes GT3, 31st car off track in front of your leaders there. Brown, Ludwig, Dowen, Blendowski, McSparren, Hawkins, Dowdy, and Forkel round out the rest of your field, as that was, it looks like, Evo running into more issues, the 605, and we'll take a second look at this, and not quite sure what happened here, guys, but, oh, it was contact. It was big-time contact with Rick Scott.
And Rick Scott is now going quite slow along the racetrack, and there's some heavy damage to that machine, and that race car has been beat up. So Rick Scott...
Yeah, it was contact with the GTE there. That was that was Ivo Andreini there, and just kind of came in, tried to apex out of the corner, and just right into Rick Scott. We'll get one final look at it. But yeah, no, that was not a good move from the 605 there, just trying to apex out, and whammo.
Yeah, it really was just a mistake. Wasn't anything malicious or anything. Just a mistake from Evo there on exit of turn 1. Ended up just nailing Rick Scott. Rick went around the first time. Then, as he was trying to get back into things, went around again, or at least off the track. I forget which one it was, but yeah, and the S's just got really sideways. Didn't spin around, but definitely went off the track by quite a bit. Gets back into things though. So a couple of big moments, unfortunately, for Rick Scott, who is running in 11th, the 10th overall. Prototype on the track, as now he catches back up to Andreini. They're going to work that out easily though.
Yeah, and we saw Rick Scott going off track there for a moment, but yeah, that was not at all what Rick Scott wanted to happen there, and basically got blindsided, had no idea. So spotter probably said car inside, he's like, oh yeah, that's going to be fine, and then blam. So Rick Scott now falling back down to 11th. That puts Tom Stanley still in the top 10. If you want to know how fast that 961 is, he's still in the top 10 with just under 45 minutes to go. It's 41:30 right now left to go in this motor race, and it looks like the ticker's kind of settled on about 60 laps. I think that's what we're going to be doing here. So Stephen Baxter has about 20 laps to go, 21 laps to go when he crosses the start-finish line. But with that, we're going to take another moment to step aside here on LSRTV. We'll go non-stop. So you don't miss a moment of the action. You're watching the Sportscar Showdown, the Pro Split, the Atlantic Major Series, right here on your home for sim racing, LSRTV. Back in a moment from COTA.
So obviously you guys have come from the virtual world to reality. What do you think about a sim racer coming in the real world? What were your expectations coming in?
Coming from iRacing, a computer program basically down here to a real world scenario where you got all these guys with all these years and years and years and years of experience that are also using iRacing as a tool to come out and run against those guys and beat them and finish ahead of them and show them, there's a thing or two you might be missing is fantastic. I mean, that's a skill that I know I don't have, and I can appreciate it because I'm terrible at iRacing.
Glenn was able to come into the team. We did a lot of preseason testing, actually a full season's worth of testing before we even started the season. And he came in, there was a lot of sectors that he was the fastest guy out of our team. And Sparky and I looking at data, trying to catch up to him through some turns. And of course, some places Sparky will be the fastest or I'll be the fastest, and Glenn is able to learn from, what we're doing and vice versa. So it was excellent to see his pace right off of the bat, and speed was never a worry. It's about qualifying well. Qualifying is very difficult, and pretty important in this series. And so is, being able to make effective passes without contact. It's very difficult to pass in these cars, so it's not easy being here.
I think the level of ultra competitiveness in here, where when normally when you make a pass, you're making a pass with two cars involved. But if we're making a pass in this series, you have to remember there's 5 cars waiting behind you. If you mess up that pass, they're going by you.
Yeah, it's like sharks.
Yeah, you're surrounded by sharks. But no, it's been I've been very surprised and very pleased with it. And obviously, I have the 2 champions I'm sitting between. John actually statistically is the most successful MX-5 Cup driver in the world. He owns every record that you would want, none of the bad records.
Maybe some of them, I don't know.
Maybe some of those. And Sparky's one of the quickest guys in the paddock, and obviously the champion now. So I couldn't have picked a better team to be with Six Sideways. I'm looking at what everybody in the paddock calls gold. I mean, they will pay to look at John and Sparky's data, and I get full access to it, and I get to see where I'm doing well and see where I can improve. And I've been really pleased with my progress.
Back live here at COTA, and we're showing James Dowan because Andrew and Kelly just about had a heart attack here just a moment ago, and I was grabbing some food. But guys, what happened?
Well, it was just a case of Stephen Baxter trying to get around some lap traffic, and James Dowan just had a bit of an issue going through the S's, and it was almost a case of just bad timing. Yeah, I think we just saw it on screen there as Dowan just lost control of his car for a moment, and it looked like he was just going to T-bone Stephen Baxter and take him out of the race. And that was definitely a frightening moment for the 888 machine, because it scared me. I can't imagine what he was seeing in that driver's seat as he suddenly saw a car nearly go sideways in front of him, ending his just fantastic run that he's had.
Yeah, absolutely, and that would not at all be good for Stephen Baxter, who has basically owned this race so far. 22 seconds right now in front of them, as Huxley running into more issues, and what looked like a rebound for the 322 may have just gone out the window, Andrew.
Yeah, I just went back and saw it, and Huxley just braked a little bit late into the hairpin after the back straight, if you will, and ended up locking up after he knew he was already in too deep. Locked up, went off the racetrack, was almost looking straight at one of the barriers, had to back up and get back into things. Luckily, he didn't go off into the gravel, or I don't think that car would have stopped once he got there, so avoided danger, I guess, for Huxley, but still, just not exactly what you want to have. And as you mentioned, looked like maybe he was starting to rebound, get a handle on that 322, and now it's looking like it's not the case.
Yeah, and Huxley gonna lose all that time that he had made up on the rest of the prototype field here, so it's gonna be a long day for him. But looking through the rest of your field to catch up, Tom Stanley, newsflash, he's still eons ahead of everybody else. At this point, doing math, it's at least 50 seconds back to Thomas Peterson, so that's probably not going to be a thing anytime soon. But through the rest of your GTE field, there is a little bit of a battle going on. How about Mark Lossing and Simon Thorns, the 974 and the 743? Those two Ferraris probably are going to go at it here. They've closed up just in the last little bit here.
Yeah, going through the S's now, those two Ferraris looking like they're about to go at it, as Thorns is now getting right up to the bumper of Lossing coming out of the S's just now, and you have to wonder if he's going to maybe make his move going into that last hairpin, or maybe even trying to come out it and get a good run down that back straightaway. But definitely one of the better places to make a pass on that on this racetrack is after this long straight. But a bad exit from the S's for Thorns, as he's going to lose a lot of ground to Lossing, and maybe he'll have to rely on the draft coming out of the back straightaway to help bring himself back into touch.
Yeah, and it's not quite the Ferrari apocalypse Razor, but definitely a lot of the Ferraris lately have been running into some issues here. But through the rest of your field, everybody else, apart from, this is interesting, Chambliss and Kelly are a little bit close. It's about a second between these two, but apart from that, it's been fairly spaced out. Huxley, meanwhile, trying to get past it. Actually, Huxley going to head to pit road here, so the tire's all but gone on that 322 after spinning out, so looks like Huxley gonna bring that car down pit road for a second pit stop here of the day. And actually, it might be pit stop time for some of these drivers, because we have about half an hour left, so you'd think they should be able to make it from here on out here, Andrew.
Yeah, Cisco, and as we were off and away at LSR Nonstop, I did mention to Kelly at least that Mike Kelly came into pit, and there were a couple others with him. I think Blendowski, at least for a while, came in. I think he's still in the pit lane, sitting there getting repairs to his car. And I also saw Aaron Brown from the GT3 class come in and get service. Seems like there's another car actually in the pit lane. I'm not sure who that is. Okay, that's Huxley, sorry. But yeah, Kelly came in, got service, basically just left Banfield on the track. So now Banfield on old tires, at least as far as that battle goes, probably will lose time to Kelly, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kelly ends up taking that position between those two by the end of the race. Chambliss ends up kind of in the middle of the whole thing. Actually, I think he just came in to get service to his car not too long ago as well. Yeah, looks like 2 laps ago, and Steven Baxter, I think, just came in.
Yeah, Baxter came in. We were kind of following him around a little bit. He's in second right now, and we'll get that spot back once Stefan Schlacker comes down pit road as well. So the 117 still waiting on Riley Thompson, Ross Banfield, Carl Burke, Terry Wellman, and Lonnie Fitch, as well as Rick Scott. All those prototypes still having to make a pit stop. And meanwhile, Julian Huxley, the only other prototype out on track that's not Mark Blendowski anyway, is on their 3rd pit stop at the moment. So Julian kind of having not the day, obviously had to heat up all those tires after it fell off track. So Blendowski, you can see him still on pit road right now, but waiting on Stefan Schlacker, who continues to stay out here for just a little bit, but the stint's got to come to an end pretty soon here.
Yeah, you cannot run this car forever, and he just can't quite make it to the end of the race. So he's gonna try to stretch it as long as he can, but at the same time, the more he stretches it, the more time Steven Baxter is gonna gain just by having those fresher tires. But Steven Schlacker can possibly wait until he's about to catch some lap traffic and then decide to duck down the pit road instead of trying to battle it out with those guys, the slower cars. So that could be the strategy that he may be trying to employ before he comes down pit road, and maybe try to use that to try to catch up to Baxter just a little bit.
Baxter, though, has a fairly good chance of being able to grab the lead back. It's only about 18 seconds between Schlacker and Baxter, and a little bit more because Baxter giving way there to get around James Dowen. 42 kind of all over the place at this point. Another, once again, kind of towards the end of the S is not the place where you want to catch lap traffic, and finally Baxter going to be able to get by. Dowen, who has basically been through the wars at this point, that 42 Ferrari, that black and white machine, not been a good day for him at all. Baxter rolling through and still waiting on those cars. There's Riley Thompson, actually not too far behind Steven Baxter, only about 5 seconds or so. But that'll all go out the window when Riley comes down pit road. Ross Banfield as well, still waiting on him to make a pit stop. It's about 31 seconds back to Mike Kelly as well. It's the 60 of Rick Scott. Rick Scott comes down pit road.
Yeah, now a battle that we might have to start focusing on would be the potential battle between the 956 and the 56, actually. That's Thomas Peterson and Claude Belval. It seems like Belval has actually chipped away very slowly, but surely at that, I guess not even a lead, but second place gap back to third of Belval. Belval locks up big time to avoid, I think that's Lonnie Fish that just went by him.
No, Terry Wellman.
Terry Wellman. So big moment there, but they get through it fine. And Lonnie Fitch is actually behind Belval. But anyways, that second place battle in GTE could be brewing. It seems like in GT3, though, as far as the overall, or I guess the class win, Whitworth has pretty much locked that up because it's over the front straightaway, more space, than the front straightaway there. Man, that is between first and second in GT3, and Rory Collins is still quite a way back of Hingston.
It's been a struggle today, both for us as Dowen locks up the brakes right in front of Higston there, but it's been a battle for us with just trying to get English out. So we're doing the best we can. But Brian Barney, that's a close battle there. How about this? The two Audis are 5th and 6th in class right now, still waiting on them. Actually, no, they made their pit stop already, so they should be good to go to the end. But how about this? The two Audis battling it out here. I like it.
Yeah, Jose Pavone and Brian Barney both going at it, and looks like Barney just trying to use that draft a little bit down this long back straightaway, and we'll have to see if this will develop into a bit of a battle because they are getting quite close to each other. And it looks like, I think that might be Eddie Hawks right in front of him, so this is nearly a 3-car battle going on for 4th place here is Jose Pabon and Brian Barney slowly catching up to Eddie Hawks.
Yeah, they are, and Hawks going to be in a case where he's getting caught despite the fact of being in that AMG. So Pabon and Barney, though, we'll have to see if they go side by side or kind of work together to catch that Mercedes here. Are we going to see the manufacturers work together or not? Because all considering, I said Pabon and Barney had kind of run into issues here, but some of these cars have come down pit road. Daniel Knight, Randy Ludwig. If Pabon and Barney are on the one-stop strategy and they're good to the end of this thing, which they've been out there for a little while now, but if they're good to the end, not a bad day, 5th and 6th for the Audis here. Not the win, but not a lot better of a day than it looked like they were going to have earlier today.
Yeah, and Cisco, realistically, we shouldn't be seeing these guys back in if they were trying the strategy, and it looked like maybe they were. It seemed like most of the GT3 class was doing that, but I know from running the Mercedes at Daytona and Sebring, just those 2 races kind of showed me that these cars don't quite make it a full hour. So if they're not, if they're just running engine map 3 and not worrying about fuel at all and just going, I guess, balls to the wall, they may come back in. And I think if we see them come back in, it'll be with about 15 to 10 minutes to go, somewhere in that range. So we still have, as I look at the time left, about, I guess, 15 minutes before we see what exactly comes to fruition. But they don't make it quite to a full hour if you just run them as they are. So we'll see what these guys do. It's going to be really interesting to see who comes back in and who doesn't.
Yeah, it is for sure, and we'll just have to see how that pans out. But later on through the rest of your field, how about Lonnie Fitch and Terry Wellman? Both the 2 purple Daytona prototypes we have starting to close up a little bit. They're stuck behind some lap traffic right now. That's Thomas Peterson, the 2nd GTE car in class. So actually it's not, super lap traffic, but with that, these 2 at this point going to go to battle. And in the addition of things Tom Stanley's done to prove how fast he is now within, I believe, he's still got a while before he'll do that, but eventually he's getting to the point where he might lap Thomas Peterson before the end of this race.
It is still quite a ways to go, but it's possible because he has been absolutely flying out there. Thomas Peterson's going to turn 1 at the moment, and Tom Stanley, he's actually just coming on to the back, or no, that's not the back straightaway. He's actually going through, I think that's the final sector. So yeah, he's getting close to possibly being able to lap Thomas Peterson, and that would mean he would lap the entirety of the GTE field. And if that does happen, that will just be absolutely unreal. And I don't understand how someone could be so much faster than everyone else.
Well, guys, as that is totally a possibility, I will say, as I think Cisco's away from the mic for just a moment, he does have to, or Stanley that is, does have to get by Belval first. We've seen how hard it is for anybody to get by Belval. Has not been easy. Granted, Belval just locked up into the hairpin heading onto the back straightaway, but still, has not been easy for anyone to get by that 56 car, Kelly. So, yeah, Stanley could easily lap these guys, but he does have to work through plenty of lap traffic to get there. So we'll just have to see how the last, 25 minutes go for him and the rest of the field. It looks like most of the race is actually somewhat calmed down. Kanata, Caranci, they're separated. Go Lightly, I think, is even separated from Lossing. So most of these guys, I think, have settled out to just basically lap traffic battles and not really anything for position left on the surface.
Except for this one prototype battle, yeah, pretty much. Everybody else fairly spaced out. Huxley and Thorns might go at it, but that's a prototype versus a GTE car, so that won't last very long. Apart from that, yeah, everybody's very spaced out right now, so we're going to stay with Fitch and Wellman here as they come through the final turn.
Yeah, Fitch just trying to catch up to Terry Wellman. Right now he's got a GE in his way. That's Thomas Peterson actually at the moment. So Lonnie Fitch is trying to find a way around him. He's going to try to just take the inside going through this first hairpin. I think another possible battle we may have shaping up is Stefan Schlocker and Ross Banfield. But Schlocker's been just so fast throughout the this entirety of this race. So I don't know if he's going to be able to, if Banfield's really going to be able to catch up to Schlocker. And I think Banfield might actually still need to pit, which may put him into the reaches of Mike Kelly.
Speaking of Mike Kelly just had a big lockup trying to get by James Dowen. We've seen Kelly have issues with lap cars already in this race, and nothing is changing here as Kelly's trying to get by the 42. Finally does it. That was a few corner struggle there for Mike Kelly to get by the 42 car.
Yeah, and Kelly, keep in mind, has gotten spun around twice today at the top of the racetrack, but still gained one position from where he started. So Kelly, unfortunately, though, Ross Banfield has gotten back around him, and it's about a massive gap right now. Actually, it's because Ross Banfield still hasn't pit yet, so he's on the strategy of, I think here, Andrew, stay out for as long as humanly possible, then come down pit road at the end. And after he does that, then we'll see where Banfield and Kelly kind of come out in this battle here. Same deal with Thompson. Thompson running in until it goes dry at this point.
Yeah, Thompson's still out on the racetrack. That puts him ahead of Schlocker at the moment. And he's just, like you said, he's running that car until it's dry, or maybe until he catches up to a big pack of GTEs or GT3s at a moment where you can just kind of duck into pit road. But it doesn't really seem like there's any sort of real packs on the racetrack at the moment, except for maybe the group that Wellman's currently trying to deal with. That's a GTE and a GT3 coming through the last corner, and just trying to pick his way through those without losing too much ground. Is actually Lonnie Fitch is going to come down pit road, so Wellman no longer having to worry about that on-track battle at the moment.
Yeah, but Wellman, we're still counting on making a pit stop here, as will Carl Burks. So the rest of those prototypes also still have to come down pit road. So the battle for a moment is on ice, but going back to the battle between the two Audis, and the Red Bull Audi right now has fallen down, has lost that position to Brian Barney, as lap traffic going to go roaring by here. 3 cars all going to try and get by. A Mercedes, a prototyper has already gotten through, and a Ferrari as well. But Barney right now on top of the Audi, I guess it's sort of a class within a class here, the Audi battle.
Yeah, and Pabon just gave up a little bit of time. Actually had a wide exit out of the sharp left-hander out of the back straightaway here at Coda, and just gave the position pretty much right up to Brian Barney. These guys aren't battling for any sort of win, so I don't think they're going to race each other too hard. As actually Kanata is going to go by Pabon, and Kanata actually gets loose. He's hard into the barriers. He continues on, but Kanata just got loose in the S's and just slid right off track into the barriers there, and the 97, for all intents and purposes, is just destroyed. I'm not sure if he still has his fast fix, but I think the nice thing that's kept these guys pretty much packed together throughout the entire field is that we do have a fast fix. But Kelly, man, the 97 just destroyed that wall.
Yeah, he has gotten some heavy damage on that race car, and he's definitely going to have to come down pit road. I'm sure he might even have a meatball. There's another car stopped on the side there. Looks like Daniel Knight before the hairpin. He's just completely stopped on the racetrack, not even moving, just kind of rolling backwards at this moment. So I do not know what's going on with that 295 machine, but that car is dead in the water at the moment.
I'm not really sure. I'm trying to pull the replay back and find out what happened to Daniel Knight, but I don't really know. I'm going to see if we can find out what happened to the 295.
My replay is kind of giving me a fit, but I see at least one hard impact for the 295. But yeah, big issue there.
Okay,
interesting.
We're going to get a look at it here. Yeah, we're going to see if we can get a replay here on what happened to the 295. You can see him going through the S's right there, and everything looks for the moment to be fairly okay, but comes on to, there's another corner there, and not really sure what I'm looking for. Maybe that? No, he just got a little bit loose there. That's not an issue. Curb? Nope, that's not an issue. Oh, I think I realized what happened. He might have had a connection issue, lost connection, and came back into somebody. So I'm not quite sure what happened, but yeah, Daniel Knight running into massive issues there. So I'm not really sure what happened, except the 295 rather continuing to sit off the circuit, just off to the left side a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what the situation is with race admins in this series. I'm not sure if there's actually an admin sitting in. Hopefully there is, and they can take attention to this. But he is still, like you mentioned, Cisco, just sitting in the hairpin. Granted, he's a little bit before the entry and pretty much out of the way, but still, if something happens where you have like a 3-wide battle and one car it just gets a little too far to the left, you could have something big happen. You never know. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on here with Daniel Knight, but hopefully he can at least get the car off the track here soon.
Yeah, no, this car is just sitting kind of almost abandoned off to the left side of the racetrack. We'll have to see what's going to happen there, but yeah, Daniel Knight running into issues there as we pick back up with Barney and Pabon. You can see Pabon's opened up that, or lost that gap by a ton of time there to Brian Barney. So Barney's been able to kind of walk away from that one. Looking back through the rest of your field here, still waiting on Thompson and Banfield to come to pit road. Carl Burke and Terry Wellman as well. And Tom Stanley, Thomas Peterson. Meanwhile, the story of that, it's now 1 minute 15 seconds that Tom Stanley has on a gap back to Thomas Peterson. So it's huge at this point for Stanley. Don't know if he'll have enough time to lap him, but it's getting kind of ridiculous at this point. He is so far ahead.
And Tom Stanley just ran his fastest lap of the race at a 2 minute 3 seconds .396. So that car is only getting faster. This is just unreal, the pace that he is putting down, and he's over a half of a lap ahead of the closest car, and he's slowly picking away, and there is an opportunity that it's possible. I don't know if he's not going to quite have enough time though to catch up, because as you said, it's a 2 minute lap for him, and he's just over a minute ahead of Thomas Peterson. So I don't think it's going to be quite possible for him to do a full field lap.
No, but 17 minutes left to go, just passed, and we're at the 10 laps to go here, Mark, according to our calculations anyway. And Stephen Baxter, when you consider the fact that Riley Thompson still has to make a pit stop here, and even then, it's a 10-second gap between Baxter and Thompson, and you can add another 18 seconds back to Stefan Schlacker, who has pitted at this point. So at this point, I'd say it's roughly an 18-20 second gap right now that Baxter has on second overall. So a very good job for Baxter. He has done a very good job to pull away from the rest of the field here, and has kept himself relatively clean of issues. Had one scare a little bit earlier, but apart from that, everything looks good in the 888 camp.
And from the overall leader to the driver currently in 21st, but leading the GT3 class around COTA, Brandon Whitworth. And we haven't really mentioned him a whole lot as far as, I guess, giving him praise. We've mentioned him in a couple of battles, but not really praised him much. I do want to mention, I just watched him pretty much run down through the corners even. I think that's, let's see, yeah, it should be Ivo Andreini and Kanata. Actually, I know Kanata's damaged, but you see him make the pass there on Andreini. Whitworth actually is moving pretty good right now. The 377 is hooked up pretty well for being quite a ways into a run here. It's been, I think, about 40 minutes since he pitted, if not longer. So the 377 doing pretty good given that we're so far into a run. Granted, these guys aren't the quickest of the GTE cars by any means, but we've been praising Tom Stanley for working through some of the slower prototypes. So we kind of have to do the same thing here with Whitworth as he continues to lead in GT3.
Yeah, Whitworth has done an excellent job in this GT3 field, and everything looking good right now for that car to come home with the trophy here from COTA. And Patrick Hingston, meanwhile, is kind of about 14 seconds back of Whitworth, so kind of out of range at the moment. Looking through the rest of your field, everybody just very spaced out at this point, just counting down the time left in the session, just past the 15 minutes to go mark. Stephen Baxter continuing to lead here, Kelly, and just looking through the rest of the field here, everybody else spaced out or waiting on pit stops here. I'm waiting to see Thompson and Banfield, because in theory, they still have to come down pit road one more time. I don't think they can make it to the end. I don't think that's even possible.
They may be just trying to stretch it for as long as possible, so they finish the race on some fresher tires and maybe try to catch up to the guys that will pass them on the pit stop cycle. But as you said, I think they are going to have to come down pit road. They may be trying to save as much as possible, but I don't think it's going to be able to save. They're going to be able to save for another 15 minutes.
It's a lot of time, and Andrew, if you're Thompson and Banfield, I mean, you're on your strategy at this point, but which one do you like more? Do you like the staying out and running it till it's dry, or do you like the short pit to try and make things work in the end?
Given that the leader at this point came in twice, and that was his strategy from the get-go almost, since he pitted a little bit earlier than a lot of guys on the track. If I have the car that Thompson does battling up front most of this race, I definitely would have still gone the 2-pit strategy, and I would have pitted by now, because it takes a little bit to warm these tires up, warm the brakes back up. The tires mostly, because the brakes generally don't cool down that much under a pit stop, but you're getting all new cold tires. So you want to warm those tires up, get them into, I guess, the maximum grip levels, if you will, where they're a little bit heated up, and they're into the track, they're hooked up to the track. But I think where Banfield hasn't quite had the car to maybe go win a race, if I'm Banfield, I might have actually tried to stretch it out to about halfway, and at least tried to go for the one-stop strategy, at least tried to make something happen. Because if you know you can't go out there and win based on speed, you pretty much have to try something with strategy, whether it's an IMSA race or just a normal short track race or a NASCAR race, whatever it is. If you can't go out there and win on pure speed, you have to find something to do with strategy to try and win.
Yeah, and we saw it was Marshall Williams coming down pit road. That Ford GT is in, and not been a great day for Marshall. Started 24th overall, now 29th. He's 12th in class, one of the lower down in your GTE field here. Is kind of behind a majority of your GT3 field. And definitely looking to put this race here behind him. Jason Wallet kind of coming through the corner there. But, yeah, no, I agree. I don't know, because it's always, we have this discussion all the time whenever Kelly and I, do endurance racing or something like that, is which strategy do you want to take? Do you want to try and go off strategy or something like that? And Thompson and Banfield have made that decision versus Schlacker and Baxter on the hive mind strategy that most everybody else is on at this point.
And it's really not too much of a downside to attempting it, because I don't think they're going to lose, even if it doesn't work out for them. It's not like they're going to lose a ton of ground on right at this moment. If Banfield can't quite stretch it out, he may lose it to Mike Kelly or maybe Chuck Chambliss as well. But Riley Thompson, I think him trying to stretch this out as much as possible is going to be the best for him. But he's actually slowly getting caught up by Stefan Schlacker at this moment.
Yeah, and Thompson, I think, just trying to cling on here as 11 minutes to go, just coming up to the... And, sorry about that. And, yeah, you mentioned Chuck Chambliss, who we talked a little bit at the beginning of the show, but apart from that, has been very quiet here today, Andrew, and has just done his job and done it fairly well. It's lost one position on the start, but apart from that, has managed to stay out of most of the conversation and all the craziness today.
Yeah, aside from Chambliss, I think, being one of the first prototypes to come in and pit, we haven't talked about him much all race long, and he's done, as you say, a really good job of just maintaining, doing what he has to do to get a good finish. If something maybe happens with Mike Kelly, as he just almost drifted part of the final sector of this track, if something happens there, or with anyone else in the top 5, he could be within striking distance, most notably of Mike Kelly. But either way, he's put himself in a decent enough position to maybe get a top 5 if something happens here. I don't think anything's going to happen, except maybe when Banfield comes in, if he comes out right with Mike Kelly, that will be a stark contrast between tires and grip levels and whatnot, considering Mike Kelly's been on the track for I don't know how many laps now. I think about almost 20. Okay, there you go, 14. Whereas Banfield will be on new tires. If they get around each other, that could be interesting to watch. But really, Chambliss has just been quiet, like you say, and a few other names that would fit into that category would be Carl Berg, Terry Wellman, Lonnie Fitch. Further back, Mike Golightly out of a different class, Mark Lawson, even Simon Thorns, as I believe we have about 5 to go predicted.
Yeah, it should be about 6 laps to go here. They just come to start lap number 55 now as Stephen Baxter. So Baxter at this point, it's about 9:26 left to go, so it looks like the ticker has made up its mind. It's been on 60 for a while, so I'm pretty confident with that being the lap amount that we're gonna get here. So it should be 5 laps to go here for Stephen Baxter coming back to the start-finish line. And just kind of going through the rest of your field here, Caranassi and Kanata, that battle's all but evaporated at this point. It's about 10 seconds now. Lossing and Thorns is kind of close here. They're about a second and a third or so from each other here. So this might be something before the end of it, the 974 and the 743.
Yeah, the 974 and 470 or 743 are just slowly trying to catch up, or sorry, the Simon is slowly trying to catch up to Mark Lossing, but there is still a bit of a gap, but there's still a small amount of time left. He does have an opportunity. He is within basically the distance to kind of close out the gap in case Mike Golightly if actually, I'm taking a look at this. Thorns got around Lossing in the last lap. The Thorns is ahead of Lossing. I don't know what happened there, but I was like looking through the standings and flipping between the two, and I was realizing that it was actually Thorns ahead of Lossing at the moment. So within this last lap, they did swap positions.
Yeah, so Thorns was able to get by. That was for 7th in class in your GTEs. Looking through Tom Stanley, Thomas Peterson, Claude Belval, Edward Carnassi, Josh Kanata, that's your top 5 in GTE. Then Michael Lightly, Simon Thorns, like you said, was able to get past Lossing here, and then Halleck in 9th, and Eric Klein in 10th. Eric Klein, another driver who we've rarely said a word about today in the 4GT, and hasn't been particularly stunning, but just been kind of plugging away at it. Started 23rd, running 23rd, so not a lot of change there for the 542, but a decent day nonetheless. Get the car out of the wall. That's always a good thing.
And as I look back to the GT3 battle for the win, we've been talking a lot about prototypes and GTE having good battles. The GT3 battle is so spread out right now that these guys, I think, will finish as they are. Brandon Whitworth has a pretty decent lead over Patrick Hinkson right now. For that position, Rory Collins, I think, is actually a full lap behind these two who are first and second. So Rory Collins not having the greatest day.
Lap. Holy cow.
Yeah, and Eddie Hawks is almost a sector behind him. So really this whole class is spread out. The one battle I see that might come about would be Eddie Hawks possibly and Brian Barney, but even that is a stretch of the imagination at this point. They're not too far apart, but still, far enough that with 6 minutes left, I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's 6 minutes, 30 seconds left to go here in the session, and Stephen Baxter coming around. Going to get 4 to go here when he crosses the start-finish line. So Baxter looking very good right now, and still not really a lot of issue for him to deal with apart from some lap traffic, and that's about it. But it's 24 seconds. We mentioned Riley Thompson waiting for him to come down pit road. He has, and has come out in 3rd position. Banfield has done the same, and if you're wondering where's that put Mike Kelly, he's just right here, just on the edge of the frame. So this might be something, considering, look at the traffic that Banfield's in. This might be a battle before the end of this.
Oh, and a little bit of contact between a GT3 and between Banfield. So here comes Mike Kelly going to try to get around these GT3 cars. Banfield's still got another GTE to get around. So this is going to be helpful for Mike Kelly. And that GTE that was a Ferrari of James Dowen. Just didn't quite realize that there was someone on his inside and nearly turned right into Banfield.
And this is going to get interesting here because Kelly, I think, is going to try and get this position before the end of it. He's close enough that he'll be able to make that move, but the issue is Banfield has fresher tires. So the question is Kelly faster on the old tires, or will those tires heat up and be good enough for Banfield to pull away a little bit? Certainly the lap traffic absolutely slowed him down. If they catch more of it, it could be trouble, but very clear track in front of Ross Banfield, at least for the moment here, as we are 4 laps to go here from COTA.
Yeah, and as the laps wind down, Banfield, I guess, came in and pitted, so this tightens these two up. We talked about, actually I mentioned not too long ago, the possibility of these two being in a battle with very different grip levels under the cars, but I think there's enough of a drive in Mike Kelly to try and chase down Banfield. That would be for 4th, so really, Mike Kelly's still in a pretty good spot, all things considered. Getting spun twice, 5th is not bad, but I think he's got enough of a drive left in him. He never quits, and he's going to be going after this 897 with just a handful of laps to go at this point in the race, as he almost dives it into 1, but I think that was just the closing rate into the corner, gets a little sideways and powers off.
Yeah, and Banfield starting to pull away now. Those fresh tires absolutely helping the 897 pull away. So time ticking down as Stephen Baxter going to come, and he'll collect 3 to go here at the start finish line, and time running out. It's only about 4 minutes left in the session here, so when the timer hits the end here, it will cut to and kind of cut us all off here, but looking like maybe we get maybe 2 laps actually out of this whole thing. I'm not sure we're actually going to get that last lap quite, because these guys are lapping at about 2 minutes or so. So we'll probably get 2 laps out of this here. So it should be 2 laps to go here at the start-finish line for Stephen Baxter.
And if people are wondering why we're focusing so much on the battle between Ross Banfield and Mike Kelly, about half an hour ago, maybe even a little bit more, these two were going into the hairpin, going towards that back straightaway, and Banfield kind of dived it in on Kelly a little bit, and they got into each other, turned Kelly around, and Kelly had already been turned by some lap traffic just shortly before, so that really fired up Mike Kelly, and he ended up, as he spun himself back around and getting into the side of Ross Banfield, and these two had quite a heated battle earlier on, and now it's going to maybe see if these guys have calmed down a little bit, or if this is going to be a fierce battle until the end, because we are getting very close to the end of this race, as Cisco just mentioned, and Mike Kelly has closed that gap quite considerably once again. He's pretty strong through that last sector.
Yeah, he has, and Kelly will not go quietly into the night, it looks like, so Banfield not quite able to shake Kelly yet, and gonna get a little bit loose out of there, but Kelly's still there. If there's a mistake out of Banfield, he'll be in prime position to make that pass, but coming down across the start-finish line now, Baxter coming down out of the back straightaway here, and should be getting the white flag here. More or less, it'll be two to go, but should get the white flag here. We only have about 2 minutes left, so he should only get about 1 lap out of this race here from here on out. So should be coming to collect the white flag this time. Stefan Schlacker also just coming out of the back straightaway now.
Oh, spin from Mike Kelly.
Mike Kelly might have been too much.
Mike Kelly goes around.
Yep, might have been too much attack there. We'll take a second look at it there, Kelly. What happened?
Looks like he just hit that yellow curbing on the inside, and the S's may have just been distracted by a GTE that was kind of spun off into the runoff area, but Mike Kelly just trying to catch a little bit too much of the apex, spun himself around, gave himself a little bit of damage on that big curb there, but that's definitely going to end his chances to catch up to Ross Banfield unless Banfield makes a huge mistake.
And the day for Mike Kelly just doesn't seem like it wants to get any better. So Kelly, a very long day, and I think he'll be happy to walk out of here with the top 5, all considering here, Andrew.
Yeah, and while it's still a large gap back to Chuck Chambliss, as you mentioned, should get a top 5 for Mike Kelly, but Chambliss isn't totally out of range of maybe making something happen if Mike Kelly maybe makes another mistake. He can't come in and get tires at this point. It's too late in the race for that, so he has to just stick it out. Mike Kelly does. So if he has another spin on this next lap, possibly the last lap, likely the last lap, we could see Chambliss maybe get up there for 5th position. But Stephen Baxter, we talked about him a lot at the start of the race, haven't really talked about him much since, but he has made, well, I guess I haven't praised him much since, that's what I'll say. We praised him a lot at the start, but he has made a great run out of this 888, much like Tom Stanley. These two have just been on rails in their respective classes, and now you see it's going to be an overall win for Stephen Baxter.
Yeah, and if he pushes the pedal down, he should be able to get another lap out of it, but if he just lays off a little bit, only about 18 seconds left. I think even if he was at full chat, I don't think he'd be able to make it to the line in time, so Stephen Baxter looking to come around the last couple corners here, and just a few moments away here. Looking final corner this time. No, actually, no, I got psyched out. This is the last sector here, and yep, sure enough, time running out here, so we'll be coming to the final lap here. White flag in the air for Stephen Baxter.
Yeah, and this has just been tonight's main story has just been an absolute domination from all 3 leaders. Stephen Baxter, Tom Stanley, and Brandon Whitworth have just all led their respective classes from start to finish, and minus pit stop cycles for a few of them. And actually, I think that might have been the end, because it looks like Stephen Baxter is celebrating at the moment.
Yeah, Baxter going to come across the start-finish line, finishing up on top on the ticker. So that means we done here from COTA, and Stephen Baxter going to walk away with the victory. And he's going to park it right after that first turn, and Stefan Schlacker going to come out of the turn here, and he'll come across the start-finish line to pick up 2nd. Riley Thompson also will do the same here in a little bit. Tom Stanley, if you're looking for him, coming down the back straightaway right now. Brandon Whitworth, it looks like these guys will finish in order here, so we'll catch Tom Stanley here as he comes into the complex. Riley Thompson coming down here to the final corner. He's going to get third, the last spot on the podium in your prototypes. And just wait to see when Tom Stanley makes that run across the start-finish line. He'll pick up the GTE victory here.
And Tom Stanley into the final sector of not only the lap but the race here for the 961. As we mentioned with the 888 of Stephen Baxter, what a great run for Tom Stanley. He set sail from the start of the race, started 14th overall, now is 10th overall. The only GTE car within the top 10 overall all day long. He's going to come home out of the final corner at COTA and win his division of the majors here at the Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, great job by Tom Stanley. And then we look for Brandon Whitworth, who's in all sorts of lap traffic here, but it's not going to matter. He's got about 12 seconds right now, 13 seconds almost over Patrick Hingston here, and he'll be able to coast away here for the victory as he makes is going to try and get past all these lap cars, but probably going to just let him cruise out to the end here. And coming into the final turn, it's going to be Brandon Whitworth going to make it for the GT3s coming out of the final corner. Awesome job for him in that 377.
Yeah, it was another dominating race from him and even Patrick Hingston as well, because we were just ahead of Brandon Whitworth at the line. There was Rory Collins, who was third in that class. So really the only two cars that kind of were in that class were Brandon Whitworth and Patrick Hingston, because those two just took off to the same level that Tom Stanley had taken off. So just a couple of extremely fast drivers that were just in this race here tonight and just showed some absolute dominance on the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. But we take a look at Stephen Baxter now, who's parked the car on the racetrack, and we're going to run you through your full race results here from COTA and talk about who finished where here at the Circuit of the Americas for the Sportscar Showdown Pro Split of the Atlantic Major Series. Stephen Baxter going to get the victory in the prototype class. Stephen Sherlocker going to finish second. Third going to go to Riley Thompson. Fourth to Ross Banfield. Fifth going to go to Mike Kelly. Chuck Chambliss finishes sixth. Seventh to Carl Berth. Eighth going to go to Lonnie Fitch. Terry Wellman ninth. And your winner in the GTE class, Tom Stanley, finishes 10th.
Second place in the GTE class and 11th overall is Thomas Peterson. Rick Scott finishes in 12th. Claude Belval in 13th. 14th is Edward Caranci, Joshua Kanata in 15th. 16th goes to Mike Golightly. 17th is Simon Thorns. Mark Lossing finishes 18th. 19th goes to Julian Huxley. And rounding out the top 20 is Terry Hollick.
And your winner from the GT3 class, Brandon Whitworth, comes home 21st overall. Patrick Hingston, second place in class. 22nd overall, Eric Klein, one of the GTE entries actually, in 23rd overall, with Rory Collins in 24th. He was third in class in GT3. Eddie Hawks comes home 25th overall. Brian Barney in 26th overall, Jose Pabon 27th overall, and those two were a battle in and of their own within the class for a little while, Barney and Pabon, but Ivo Andreini comes home in 28th overall, Marshall Williams 29th, those two were from GTE, and Jason Wallach comes home in 30th out of the GT3 class.
Yep, and 31st going to go to the driver of Randy Ludwig. Aaron Brown going to finish 32nd. James Dowan going to finish 33rd. 34th to Jason McSparron. 35th to Daniel Knight. Mark Plendowski going to be 36th. 37th to Craig Hawkins. Samuel Dowdy going to finish 38th. And Jerry Fourcole, the name that threw us all for a loop today, is going to round out your 39-car field. But we're going to take a moment to step aside here on LSRTV, get a couple more drivers that we can interview. We'll be right back here from Circuit of the Americas here on LSRTV, your home for sim racing.
It was more than impressive, I have to say. I mean, the track is identical to the real track. I was blown away how realistic it is. Every little bump, every little spray paint, everything is exactly like you're there at the track. It was a great experience. This is a warm-up lap now. Tires to get warmed up. The engine. Breathe a little bit here when you go through that little bump there. And then it's flat pretty much all the way through here, just about. hard braking. This is the slowest part of the track. And then I've done, I did many races in Formula 3, Formula 2. And then I did the very last race they did there in Group C in 1983 in the 956 Porsche. That's when Beloff got the lap record at the 611. I think I was second on the grid with the 614 or something, which was, those cars were awesome around there, of course, like any car is, that speed. And this is the corner of all corners here, the Schwerenkreuz. Flat all the way into it. And then trail brake all the way into the apex here. And then hard at it again to get good speed down the hill here. Mega fast down this hill here. Just jump from one apex to the next. Gotta be super precise here. It's almost exactly like the real thing. So, it is certainly realistic enough to get past the very, a lot of the initial hurdles you have when you try to learn to drive a race car, So, I think it's an excellent tool to learn how to race for sure, or learn to drive a car on a racetrack.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSRTV and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Live Sim Racing LLC and iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations. LSRTV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.
Back live here at Circuit of the Americas as we get set to kick off the LSRTV post-race show here for the Sportscar Showdown of the Atlantic Major Series, the Pro Split here. Cisco Scaramuzza, Andrew Cardinale, and Kelly Dahl. And first things first, we're going to talk to some drivers. So first up is going to be Stefan Schlacker, who finishes second right now in your prototype field, and he's caught up with Kelly Dahl.
Yeah, I'm here with Stefan Schlacker, and Stefan is quite an interesting race, really, and there was a few drivers that were out there really struggling. And how difficult was it for you to get through the lap traffic?
I think best would describe it as survival camp. Most of the times it was quite a mayhem. Most people were struggling with the car, and then having to drive in a multi-class race was probably a real struggle for them. And yeah, I'm just happy to come out second here behind Steven.
And we saw quite a few strategies employed by the Daytona prototype drivers throughout the race, but what do you think was the best strategy to take at a race like this?
Honestly, I don't know. My strategy was to split the second part of the race in two exact same splits. I think in general it didn't matter which strategy you used, just getting to the end was the problem, especially with the tires, because at the hot track, on such a demanding track that Coda is anyway, it's quite hard to get those tires to the end of the stint.
Well, now we're moving on. I think next we are going to be going to Nürburgring for the fifth round. And what are you really anticipating to happen there at the 2.4-hour race?
It's hard to tell. 2.4 hours, it's just about 2.5 stints for the GT3 cars there. So I think it should be a cracker, because if you get the car really down, it's gonna fly around that track.
All right, well, before we let you go, Stefan, we're going to give you the floor and allow you to thank whoever you wish to thank for such a fantastic finish here tonight.
Well, obviously, first of all, you guys for the broadcast, and of course, my sponsors from GD Omega and Poria Customs. Obviously, also my teammates over at FRH Motorsport, and obviously my friend Riley Thompson, who got a fantastic third place.
All right, well, thank you very much for stopping by and talking to us, Stefan, and hopefully we'll see you again in a couple of weeks when we go to Nürburgring. All right, so that was Stefan Schlacker, our second place finisher overall, second place in the Daytona prototypes, and I believe Cisco is now caught up with Mr. Baxter.
Yeah, I have, and stepping out of the prototype now is Stefan Baxter there, and the 888 brings it home. Overall victory and prototype victory for you, Stefan. Steven, and walk us through kind of this whole race here. We saw all sorts of incidents going on track, but the good news was you were away from most of them. It was a pretty calm race for you.
Yeah, at the start, I tried to get a bit of a cushion at the beginning, a little bit of a gap, and as the race went on into the second stint, I was just trying to basically get through the traffic without getting caught up in any incidents. Being a little bit aggressive sometimes, but other times picking me moments.
Well, you basically owned most of this race, led 50 of the 60 laps here at Circuit of the Americas. What was the biggest help for you on track in terms of the car and everything?
The biggest help on the track was, I think, a lot of the drivers were giving us a lot of room on coming up with the corner entry. Some of them were a bit, I had to back off a little bit because they were a bit suspect, but I'll not mention any names. But it could have been a nasty incident with one driver, but apart from that, it was a pretty eventful race, really. It was pretty, I didn't really say much.
Yeah, no kidding. And John Roberts was cheering you on, by the way, in the comments section. But I'll give you the opportunity to give a shout-out, sponsors, everybody who makes it happen for the Boosted Motorsports 888.
Yeah, just everybody at Boosted Motorsport, all my teammates who I really enjoy racing with in the different series we run. And me bladder for holding on to the end.
Hey, I mean, it's not quite an endurance race, but it's still 2 hours that you got to sit in the chair. So I think we're all thankful for that. But Stephen, congratulations, and we'll see you at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the broadcast as well, guys.
That's our winner, Stephen Baxter. The 888 gets it done, and now I'm going to pass the mic down to Andrew Cardinal, who's caught up with your GT3 winner, Brandon Whitworth.
Well, Brandon Whitworth, we watched you pretty much all race long when we weren't watching the other two class leaders just take off, and you did the same as them. You had a great car, and even towards the end of that second stint, you were just on rails pretty much. Tell us about your run there around COTA in the 377.
It was a pretty good race. I thought that Patrick was going to stay with me there, but I got away from him a little bit. I think he got hung up in traffic at some point. But then I decided to push to only do one stop, which was an interesting kind of thing to do. After 60 minutes on the tires, even my spotter was telling me that I needed new tires, so I pushed it pretty hard. But the one-stop strategy worked out pretty well. Didn't have any issues at the end. Stayed out of trouble. What else can you do?
Yeah, I mean, to get a win in class, something had to go right, and we saw you have that battle with Hingston for a little bit there. Seemed like for a while he maybe had the better car in the 282, and then suddenly your car came back to you. You ended up winning the event in the 377. We've already talked to a couple of guys about lap traffic. You are on the other end of the spectrum, where normally in a GT3 car in one of these races, you're, I guess, normally in the way. Tell us about your view of all the lap traffic on the track today.
Overall, it wasn't too bad. There were a couple instances where things could have gone a little smoother, but you know, it's easy to look back on that and go, well, it should have gone this way. But when you're in the heat of the moment, it's tough to make those decisions. I think there's probably a few guys that don't have a lot of experience multi-class racing, which is pretty much, you know, the other series I run in, they're all multi-class, so I got a lot of experience for that. So it wasn't too bad for me. A couple of times the DPs came through and they could probably maybe a little aggressive on the corner entrances, but I was ready for them, so I stayed out of the way.
Well, nonetheless, it was a great run for you in your number 377. So tell us about who makes it happen back at the shop for that car.
It's pretty much just me. I would like to have a team behind me, but I don't actually run the GT3 car a lot. In fact, I think this is the second time I've raced it. So, you know, I just had to get in there and get the setup in, tweak it a little bit to make me feel comfortable, and I figured that was as good as I could do. And then I won, so I guess that worked out pretty well.
Well, yeah, it must have worked out pretty well. The number 377 is on the winners list here today at COTA, and I believe that'll be it. So thank you for your time, Brandon, and I think we're going back to Kelly for our final interview possibly of the day.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and Kelly's going to catch up with the guy who got it done in the GTEs, who was in another country or zip code or whatever you want to say. Kelly Dulls with Tom Stanley.
Yeah, I'm caught up with Tom Stanley, and Tom, there's got to be a secret, something you figured out that has absolutely really just turned this car up to 11, because you took off from the start and you never looked back. We thought for a minute you were going to lap the entire GTE field. So what really did you figure out in this car that made you so fast?
To be honest, I've really had a good run at races, official and unofficial races, so that's kind of a good high for me at the minute. I don't know, I've just took, thanks to Craig's setup shop, that's where the setup was based on, and it literally just worked a treat. I'm very surprised by the pace and how much I pulled away. I think I lapped everyone bar the second and third at that rate, but yeah, that's an amazing race.
Yeah, I think you were, even in practice, you were over a second faster than the next fastest car, so it was absolutely fantastic. But we've been talking to everyone else about the lap traffic. I wanted to hear your views. What was it like dealing with lap traffic? Because you were in that GTE car, and I don't think we've spoken to any other GTE drivers. You had a faster class going around. You also had a slower class to go around. So what was it, your experience like?
It was a bit tricky because the Daytona prototype, some of the slower guys really did kind of help me up the first couple of laps, and I'm not sure if you saw that on the broadcast or not, but it did really help me up, and I had to ask them nicely to move out of the way, knowing that I was much faster. But otherwise, prototypes were fine. I just gave them plenty of room. Some of the GT field, again, I think because it's a very interesting series, being the major series, being oval and road, you've got a different mix of abilities. So some have done, you can tell the ones that have done it before, but you can really tell the ones that haven't done multi-class racing before.
All right, well, next, in a couple weeks from now, we're going on to Nürburgring, and if you're going to be coming back for that, how do you feel going into that race?
I will need a lot of practice lap because I've not really touched the Nürburgring full out before. So I think personally I'm going to be racing within my limit and just trying to survive that race rather than knowing and going flat out for the win. But again, it's a good start. It's a good start to the season. The ovals let me down a little bit, but again, let's see what the next race brings.
All right, well, before we let you go, thank you so much for coming to talk to us, and we're going to give you the microphone for a moment and allow you to thank whoever you wish to thank for this amazing run tonight.
Again, thanks to Craig's Setup Shop for the setup. Thank you to Peregrine, and thank you to all the sponsors on the car.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming to talk to us, Tom, and hopefully we'll see you again in a couple weeks.
No worries, guys. Thank you.
Tom Stanley, our GTE winner, and just an absolute dominant race. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to do it for all the drivers in here. So we'll run around, do some final thoughts. Andrew, final thoughts here from Circuit of the Americas.
Cisco, just what a race. That's actually my first formal experience with COTA, aside from, I think, one race at F1 2013 before I gave up. But this really is an amazing track. It's something else. It's totally different from most road courses that you take these kinds of cars to, where really there's at least a little bit of natural banking in some of the corners of the tracks you go to. Even at Daytona in the infield, there's a little bit of natural banking to a couple of the corners. Even if it's just half a degree, it's at least a little bit, whereas almost negative camber on some of these corners here at COTA. It's really crazy to see these guys rip around this place. And again, we talk about it a ton, but Stephen Baxter, Tom Stanley, and Brandon Whitworth just were the class of the field in their own, I guess. Each of those guys had a different zip code, but they were the class of the field in each one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly, it was dominating for some of the drivers at the top, but some of the drivers in the mid-pack, especially some of the guys like Mike Kelly and Mark Blendowski, who just could not get out of the wars today.
Yeah, there was a couple of guys that really struggled with just some bad luck and some bad situations. We heard from a few drivers that it was difficult to deal with the lap traffic. There were some people that just weren't quite experienced, but that's just part of the major series. You're going to have people that just aren't quite really. They're forced to race out of their discipline. The major series is all about finding out who's the best all-around driver. So really, it's some guys that just aren't quite used to the multi-class aspects and really cause a few problems. But everyone, most people seem to get through it. It seemed to be not too dirty of a race from where we saw in the booth, and I think it ended up being quite a fun race with the exception of a few moments.
Well, that'll do it for us here from Austin, Texas, and for everybody here behind the scenes who makes it happen. For the Major Series, Michael Lett and all of the admins and everybody who makes it happen, you can check them out at pacificmajors.com, or that's what it redirects to, but you can check them out on Facebook under the Major Series, also on Twitter, everything like that. And behind the scenes at LSRTV, Evan Pasoko, Laura Lawson, DJ Lyon. And still plenty of action for us coming up next week. No RSR again. It's a double off week because we got the off week for the first Texas race combined with the Easter off week. So we got 2 weeks off there. But Wednesday night, you can catch us on iRacing, the iRacing official channel, for the Cars Tour. The super late models are still going. The late model stocks got canceled because the real life late model stocks got canceled. And of course, Friday night, Super Speedway Cup Series. Saturday night, the doubleheader, and we'll be back with the PRL Truck Series on Sunday. But for the broadcast crew here tonight, Andrew Cardinal and Kelly Dahl, I've been Cisco Scaramuza, and we say good night to you from Coda and congratulate our 3 winners, Stephen Baxter, as well as Brandon Whitworth and Tom Stanley, who got it done here from Austin, Texas. We bid you good night, and we'll see you later.